All right, good evening and welcome. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, once again, good evening and welcome. We're delighted to have all of you here with us tonight. Tonight's meeting is being broadcast live by Boston City TV on YouTube, as well as on Comcast Channel 24, RCN Channel 13, and FiOS Channel 1962. It will be rebroadcast at a later date. If you'd like to speak this evening but have not yet signed up, please see our staff person, Ms. Lena Parvex, out in the hallway. Sign up for public comment. This evening will close at 6:30 p.m. Now, first, we have a special presentation from the committee tonight, and here in BPS, we really take great pride in the achievements of our students, both in the classroom and outside the classroom. We have another number of scholar athletes with us tonight who have been champions during the winter sports season, and we wanted to take an opportunity to honor them. So at this time, I'd like to invite the superintendent and my fellow colleagues down to the floor to continue these presentations. We have 8. Hello? Hello? Do you know? There we go. Hello. So we have 8 teams tonight that we are celebrating, and a number of the teams have Boston Scholar athletes included on their rosters as well. So as we introduce your teams, if you can identify yourselves as Boston Scholar athletes, please do so. So first up, it's the Tech Boston Academy boys basketball team. Come on up, gentlemen. Outstanding.
Thank you, thank you.
Welcome, congratulations. Welcome, congrats. Welcome, congrats. Welcome, congrats. Thank you. Brought the hardware too.
Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. That's what we like to see. So these guys are state champions, and we want to congratulate Coach Johnny Williams and the Tech Boston boys basketball team, who are the 2018 city champions, MIAA Division II, it gets better. Division II South champions, and the MIAA Division II state champions. And if I recall, you won that out in Springfield a few weeks ago against Taconic. Is that right?
Correct.
Big win.
Big win.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And I'll just read this first one off for the presentation that we're going to give to each one of these teams tonight. The school committee of the City of Boston and the superintendent of schools extend their congratulations to the team, the coaches, school staff, and student body on the occasion of this athletic accomplishment, and wish them continued good fortune and success in all of their future endeavors. Dated today, April 11, 2018. Congratulations, Coach Williams.
Thank you.
Well, do you want to introduce your players as well, and as well as your fellow coaches that you've got with us this evening?
Yeah, I'll do that. My voice. This is Shamar Moore, senior point guard. Just have to say, we have 3 players being offered full rides to Division II schools. Shamar Moore has Virginia State, AIC, District of Columbia. That's Desai, Justin Desai, Dwayne, little brother, and our athletic director, Brian Buckley.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you, Coach. And we want to ask you guys to stay up here just for a moment. We're going to get all the teams up here and do a photo at the end. Yeah, if you want to join us just up here. Okay, next up is the East Boston High School Boys Indoor Track Team. Coach Dalzon?
Yeah, Coach Dalzon.
All right. Congrats. Thank you. So the East Boston High School Boys Indoor Track Team, led by Coach Garcia Dalzon, is the 2018 city champion. Congratulations. Next up, we have the John D. O'Brien School Girls Indoor Track Team, led by Coach Camila Rowe. Congratulations. 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 Which one of you would like this?
Oh, I'm the coach.
Oh,
I'm Coach Rowe. Yes.
sorry.
Thank you. It's okay. I get it all the time.
Coach Rowe, your team is the 2018 city champions. We congratulate you and thank you for your accomplishments on behalf of BPS. So next up, we have the Boston Latin Academy boys hockey team. Boston Latin Academy's boys hockey team, led by Coach Patrick Muddy, couldn't join us this evening, but we want to recognize their achievements as the 2018 city champions as well. Congrats to BLA. Next up is the Boston Latin Academy swim team, led by Coach Richard Mojica. Congrats.
Thank you.
Mojica? Yes. The Boston Latin Academy swim team, led by Coach Mojica, is the 2018 city champions, and they brought their hardware as well. Very impressed. Congratulations. Good work. Next up is the Boston Latin School girls fencing team, led by Coach Jason Sachs. Congrats. 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 Congrats again.
Sound need a tie for this.
So Coach Sachs has brought back another winning team this year, and the Boston Latin School girls fencing team is the 2018 state champions, and they have also brought their hardware. Congratulations, ladies, on your accomplishments, and to Coach Sachs as well.
3 times in a row, right?
Excellent. The three-peat. Good work, girls. Next up is the Fenway High School girls basketball team, led by Coach John Rice.
I'm not Coach Rice, but I'm Molly.
Thank you. Congrats. Congratulations. Thank you. Congratulations. So the Fenway High School girls basketball team are the 2018 city champions, as well as the MIAA Division IV North champions. Congratulations, ladies. And our last team that we'll be honoring this evening is the Jeremiah E. Burke High School boys basketball team led by Coach Son Ryan. The Burke High School could not join us this evening, but we wanted to recognize their win as the MIAA Division III South champions. Congratulations. So I want to ask my colleagues to join us for a picture this evening with all of our champion scholar athletes. But I first wanted to ask, I know we have a number of Boston Scholar athletes in the crowd. If you could all just raise your hands to be recognized. And I apologize because I know I didn't get a full list, but reading the Boston Herald and their recognition of scholar athletes over the last few weeks, I know there's a number of scholar athletes that have been recognized in the Herald since the beginning of March, and that includes a number of members of both the Fenway girls high school team, basketball team, excuse me, as well as the Tech Boston boys team as well. And so we want to give congrats for that as well. Thank you. Also, before we take a brief photo, I want to give an opportunity to Dr. Chang to give us some remarks.
Thank you. Just a message for the student athletes. You are all an inspiration, not only to the adults in this room, more importantly, your peers. There are your peers, and especially younger peers, that look up to you and continue being an inspiration for them. Thank you for all your accomplishments. I play on Thursdays with them.
Are you decent?
What?
You're not nice, okay.
Yes, actually, I never miss. I'm serious, I don't miss.
Okay. The jury's out on that one. I've got a small.
Ask around.
Ask around?
Shooting guard?
Wait, before they leave.
I'm a shooter. That's all I do.
Always leave and say something.
Just like 90% of the audience is now me.
Go on the record.
Maybe that's just how people.
Great. Awesome.
That's smart. Give this to
We're just going to take a moment while the students, athletes clear the room. It is a school night, of course, and I'm sure they're heading home for an early bedtime. Okay. Well, first I wanted to take a moment to ask a few of my fellow colleagues if they have any comments for our student athletes. I know there's a few remaining in the rear, and of course we have an opportunity to make a comment on the record. Ms. Robinson?
Sure.
Dean Robinson.
Especially for the athletes who are still in the lobby area, I wanted to just congratulate you all. And having been a former high school and college athlete, I know how important being a scholar athlete really means to your school, to your programs. But I also want to second what Dr. Chang said in regards to younger students looking up to, these students here. Last night was the middle school championships for basketball, and my daughter was on the team that won, the Roosevelt, Go Roosevelt Warriors. And it was very exciting to see the high schoolers who were there to support the middle schoolers. And so I wanted to kind of second that before the students left to say, keep up the good work, but know that you have younger students looking up to you. And then I also wanted to just let the O'Brien girls know that my daughter's coming after them in the fall, because in the middle school cross-country championship in the fall, O'Brien was taking away everything, and she was in the top 7, but O'Brien was like top 5. So I just wanted to give them that shout out to say, get ready. I love to see the sportsmanship among the schools, but also the encouragement that they give each other. So keep up the good work, but make sure the scholar and the student come first before just the athlete part. So congratulations.
Thank you, Dean. And spoken like a true former scholar athlete yourself in a mix of sportsmanship as well as competition. We'll look forward to hearing better things and brighter things from your daughter in the near future. Okay, so, and thank you again, by the way, to Tech Boston and the T-shirts that they handed out tonight. We are all Bear proud. We'll move on to the approval of meeting minutes from March 28th, the last school committee meeting, as well as the March 31st school committee retreat. If the minutes are approved as presented, hard copies will be made available immediately in the hallway with the other handouts. If changes are made, you can access the minutes tomorrow on the BPS website. At this moment, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the March 28th and March 31st meetings as presented.
So moved.
Thank you, Dean Coleman. Thank you, Dean Robinson. Is there any discussion or objection to the motion? Is there any objection to approving the minutes by unanimous consent? Hearing none, the minutes are approved. We'll move on now to the superintendent's report. I present to you our superintendent, Dr. Tommy Chang.
Thank you, Chairperson LaConta. Good evening, Boston School Committee. Good evening, everyone. We're looking forward to hopefully warmer temperatures as we go into April break. And a lot is going on in Boston Public Schools right now. I have several updates to share and then many bright spots as well. So we'll dive into the updates first. I want to start off with the National Assessment of Educational Progress. I think folks might have read in the news yesterday that the National Report Card was released, showing the results of the 2017 National Assessment of Education Progress. This is an assessment that is used every 2 years across all 50 states and 27 urban school districts nationally, including Boston. Boston Public Schools has been part of the TUDA, which is a Trial Urban District Assessment Program, since 2003. So we have a lot of longitudinal data from the NAEP assessment. Once again, BPS is leading the nation in several areas. BPS is one of only 2 urban school districts to show significant gains in 8th grade reading since 2015, and we are one of 6 districts to make any significant gains on the NAEP in either 4th or 8th grade math and or reading. Since 2003, Boston Public Schools have increased our scores in 4th grade reading by 9 points and in 8th grade reading by 11 points. Students in calculated subgroups, and those are for the NAEP Black, Latino, low-income English learners, or students with disabilities, all scored on par or above their respective subgroups when compared to others in the country. English learners in BPS score the highest in the nation in 4th grade reading. This is something we should all be proud of. We as a city have always invested in education. These positive NAEP results are just one demonstration of that investment. As a city, we have always put an emphasis on strong curriculum, training for teachers, strong teaching, and funding for education. However, if we do look into the data some more, we are noticing that there are still persistent achievement gaps among subgroups that are not closing. Even though we have experienced some gains in some areas, overall results have stagnated across the country. This underscores why we have to continue doing the work we are doing to be focused on rigor, cognitively demanding tasks, professional development, and then truly embracing culturally and linguistically sustaining practices. The work of our Essentials for Instructional Equity, which is something that many of our teachers are using, puts an emphasis on young people's identities and bringing them into the curriculum. This work is our innovation, and this is what we are going to have to do in order to close opportunity and achievement gaps. But overall, we did fairly well compared to other urban school districts. I think as a country, though, we need to be really looking at this at these results over the next few years because there is a trend, and the trend is showing that we've kind of stagnated as a country in terms of our overall results. Next update, college completion rates report. This morning, the Boston Foundation released its latest report on college completion, on the College Completion Initiative in BPS, the Private Industry Council, and Success Boston. Here's the good news. When looking at students who enroll in college during the first year after high school graduation, their rate of college completion within 6 years is 52%, which is the highest recorded to date. When compared to other cities, these results are tremendous. We are clearly headed in the right direction. We acknowledge that this percentage falls short, though, of a previous administration's aspirational goal of doubling the college completion rate within 10 years. There are also gaps in terms of race and gender and whether or not students attended exam schools. We should be proud as a city that many sectors are working together across silos on this important initiative. It's important that we're tracking this data so it helps us make informed decisions. I do want to thank the PIC, Success Boston, the Boston Foundation, our local colleges and universities, and all our partners who help us do the work to make sure young people not only graduate from high school, but they are going to, through, and graduating from college as well. We're at 52% right now. We still have a long ways to go, and we're only going to be able to close the gap between 52 and 100%. We continue striving to improve on the rigor of what we're providing young people from pre-K to 12, and then providing the supports that they need to get them to and through college. But we have much to celebrate and much more work to do. Some bright spots I want to share. I want to start off with some recent grants and awards that have been received. Number one, congratulations to the BPS History and Social Studies Department, and congratulations to iCivics for being awarded a $95,000 grant from NBC Universal on Monday as part of the, quote, Project Innovation Grant Competition. And that's some pictures from the award ceremony, $95,000. Thank you, NBC Universal, for helping to invest in civics education. Also want to congratulate the Mattapan Early Elementary School, and hopefully in less than an hour, the Mattahunt Elementary School for winning $30,000 from EdVestors yesterday as part of the Seed Fund competition. They were one of, I believe, 4 finalists, all BPS schools, and they all did their pitches, and I'll just say Mattahunt Elementary School came out on top, $30,000. This money is going to be used to support a trip to Haiti to learn more about schools in Haiti, and the money is being obviously used to support the Haitian Creole dual language program. So congratulations to you. All the Mattahunt Elementary Schools, congratulations. And of course, I should thank EdVestors for their generous support, as always. Next bright spot. On March 29th, the Hernandez Dual Language School in Roxbury held a ribbon cutting to open its brand new playground. This is a truly special project because it started with young people. Youth Voice got this initiative started. After raising thousands of dollars, our Hernandez students contacted Mayor Walsh and asked if he could help them build their playground. And Mayor Walsh went back to the city and decided that the playground will be built as part of the city's Imagine Boston 2030 capital plan and set aside $1.25 million for a project. We should all be very proud of the young people at this school because they were ones that got this all started, and they were ones that brought various private and also public dollars together in order to make this vision come true. So thank you so much to Mayor Walsh for his support on that, and Dr. Miriam Urarte was also there as part of the celebration. Next bright spot, on April 2nd, we were at the Bradley Elementary School in East Boston and announced the launch of My Way Cafe. This is an expansion of the Hub and Spoke pilot program that began last year in partnership with the Shaw Family Foundation. This program builds hybrid kitchens in schools without full-service kitchens, allowing them to cook fresh food on site. And Mayor Walsh joined us in announcing the My Way Cafe expansion to 30 schools for next year. This is obviously an amazing announcement. Our young people are going to benefit immediately from this. Students in schools where we launched the program this year are loving the food, and they're getting this freshly cooked food 5 days a week now. And you'll hear a lot more information about this later on this evening from our Executive Director of Food and Nutrition Services, Laura Benavides, during her report. Next item. A shout out to the Boston Red Sox and probably the most famous face in Boston, David Ortiz. BPS students got to celebrate Red Sox opening day one day early last week when the Red Sox gave out hats throughout the city of Boston. Every single Boston Public School students, K through 8, received a Red Sox hat, courtesy of the Boston Red Sox and JetBlue. Students at the Hurley Dual Language School in the South End obviously got a huge surprise when Big Poppy showed up. And I don't think I've ever seen an entire school of students so excited. I think there's a picture in there of a young boy that was just, oh my God, besides himself. I was a photographer for that, so I'm going to take credit for that picture. I want to thank the Red Sox, our Office of External Affairs, for working together to make this happen. This is one of the best days of the year. And the Red Sox is always, they're just so supportive of Boston Public Schools, and this is just another example of how they're supportive. And I just have to say, I just find it funny, though, as I walk or drive around the city, how many adults are wearing those hats. So adults, they're for kids. Give it back to them, please. Today was Walk to School Day. About 2,000 BPS students participated in Walk to School Day. Wally the Green Monster again showed up to help our students. Wally the Green Monster joined parents and young people and looks like BPS staff at the Josiah Quincy Elementary School in Chinatown. And we also have some photos of the walk as the Sarah Greenwood. This biannual event is part of Safe Routes to School Boston. It's funded by Bloomberg Philanthropies Partnership for Healthy Cities, and its aim obviously is to make walking to school safe, popular, and fun. And it's also a great way to encourage healthy habits as the weather warms up. So thank you to everyone who participated in this great event citywide this morning. This evening, 8 teachers will be honored with Educators of the Year Award during halftime at the Celtics game at TD Garden. 6 teachers will receive honorable mentions. All these teachers were nominated for consistently going the extra mile to make lasting impressions on their students and the BPS community. We'll be posting the names of the winners on BPS or bostonpublicschools.org shortly. This announcement will be made at halftime on the Celtics game. If you want to go and celebrate, leave the school committee meeting now and head down there. I want to thank the Boston Teachers Union and the Boston Public Schools Office of External Affairs for honoring these teachers. And of course, most importantly, I want to thank these incredible teachers for all their dedication to the young people in the city of Boston. Sunday is one Boston Day in the city of Boston. The day serves as an opportunity to recognize the good in our community, celebrate one another, and reflect on the spirit and resiliency of the people of Boston. Obviously, this day was created out of the tragic events of April 15th, 2013. Here at BPS, we are collecting clothing and toiletries for students that will help support BPS's Homeless Education Resource Network. So you can learn more by visiting onebostonday.org. And I have one more bright spot / update. I would like to wish good luck to everyone in the BPS community that is running the Boston Marathon on Monday, including Chairperson Michael Lecanto. Mr. Lecanto will be training with the Parkway Running Club in West Roxbury, and he's raising funds to support the Boston Educational Development Fund, which will support the valedictorians and salutatorians of BPS. So just want to make a note of that. 26 miles, 26.2?
26.2. Those last two will get you.
Yeah, I wish you best of luck.
Thanks. I've also been informed that this is my first marathon. This is also going to be my last marathon, according to my family. The training's been a lot, and I'm quite tired. But Monday will all be worth it. And I want to thank just all the folks that have reached out and helped support this worthy cause. You know, when I think about our valedictorians and our salutatorians in the district, we've got 34 high schools in this district. 3/4 of our valedictorians and salutatorians every year are female. More than half have been born in another country. You know, these kids are our future. These kids are often the first in their family to go to college. They're just such impressive youngsters when they come before us every year. And, you know, being able to, I believe this is our 20th year, Ms. Sullivan, that the committee has hosted a celebration on their behalf, be able to send them off in style into the next chapter of their lives and their education. It's really a touching day, and I know it means a lot to those families. And so we thank everyone that's supported, and that'll be that. Is that the end of your remarks?
Those are the end of my remarks. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Chang. Are there any questions or discussion from the committee?
Shout out.
Okay, Ms. Robinson?
I just wanted to add to your bright spots. Last night I was able to attend the science fair hosted by the Haynes Early Education Center. This was a group of 3 to 7-year-olds. Every single class had a presentation. They made interactive exhibits. They were touring their parents. There were a wide range of activities around the weather and growing plants, and even had a wax museum of famous inventors that came to life in poetry and in song and celebrated the life of African American scientists. These 3 to 7-year-olds were ecstatic. Scientists in the making, and as I think about what we saw tonight in our high school students, it's our strong beginnings that get us there. So we'll be looking forward to seeing what they do in science fairs in the future. But I really give my hats off to all of the teachers from K0 on up who did this work. It's great.
Second happiest place on earth.
Yeah, they absolutely, last night they were the first happiest.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. Mr. McClay?
All right, so I had one question around the college completion. That is really loud. One question on how do we know where the break is going in college? Like, is it what we're not preparing students for, or is it what college is not, like, providing the students that leading them to drop out or not complete college? And how are we working with, like, our collegiate partners in order to, like, gauge that?
Yeah, I think as we can all speculate, there's a myriad of reasons. We want young people who are not prepared. One reason is when young people are not prepared for college and are having to take a lot of remedial coursework in college, they tend to fall behind, not be engaged, not feel as supported, and therefore drop out. And so making sure our young people are prepared for college level coursework is very important. Also, there's some emerging research that the AccuPlacer may not necessarily be the best assessment for college readiness. Many of our students don't do well on AccuPlacer, go to college, and are having to take these remedial courses. Bunker Hill is now looking at not using AccuPlacers as much, placing kids directly into using GPA instead, and it's showing some very promising results. Other reasons, cost of college and the demands of many of our young people who may have to take care of family, may have to have jobs, and balancing work and college is very, very difficult. So those are just a number of reasons, but we have to look at all those sort of barriers and find ways we can support our young scholars to be able to go all the way through, because 52%, while it might be better than other cities, we're not happy with it. We can't be happy with it.
And just thinking about that, think about what we celebrated last Thursday at the State House in regards to Massachusetts being one of the #1 states in regards to education in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mr.
End
McClay.
my remarks.
Ms. Oliver Dabble.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing all those bright spots. I wanted to say thank you to the Boston Foundation for really putting the resources down on Success Boston and really committing to it for such a long period of time. And we were fortunate to have such a great partner, and also thank all of the community organizations that also work, because it takes a lot of work to coach for, following students for 2 or more years. It's a 2-year contract, but it really goes on for much longer. And it's nice that we're closing, but I agree with you, there's a lot of work to be done. I would say that we know that this funding is coming to an end next year, so I just would say that given that we know we have a challenge, and then this funding is going to end, that we start really looking at how we keep the system, even if there aren't dollars that there were before at the table, and then how we actually work with our higher education partners as well to really help us to figure out how we sustain the work that's already happened, because it would be really terrible if everything that's been created now, because funding goes away, does not continue. So I didn't want to say the black cloud, but I just think it's better that we put it out there and just start planning for something that we know that is going to happen. But again, thank you to the Boston Foundation and all the organizations that are part of Success Boston for all the great work that you do, because we wouldn't be able to do it without you.
Thank you, Ms. Oliver Dabala, and thank you again for highlighting the work of our partners in this important area. I just want to take a moment to note a couple other items that occurred over the last week before we move on. One of which is I want to take another moment to extend a special thank you to my fellow colleagues here on the committee who joined the superintendent and I for a retreat on March 31st, just after we finished the last meeting and the budget vote. We spent that retreat, and you can take a look. I'd urge you actually to take a look at the minutes from that meeting that have been distributed out in the hallway, talking about 2 important issues. One is equity, and led by our colleague Ms. Robinson through her role as a co-chair on the Opportunity Achievement Gap Task Force, and Dr. Colin Rose and Ms. Becky Schuster from the Equity Office and the Achievement and Opportunity Gaps Office, to try to get a common language and common understanding around the equity issues that face the district. And we spent a good amount of our day digging deep around issues of equity that face our district, and going through a lot of the same conversations that have been occurring both in our city through the mayor's race dialogues, as well as in our district in the work that's being led by the Opportunity and Achievement Gap Office. And so I really thank my colleagues for their thoughtful conversation there. The second half of the day was a bit of committee business, and that was to spend some time talking about our calendar. You know, this is something that we frequently get some feedback on from our folks that pay a lot of attention to the committee and its meetings from week to week and month to month. We want to be more transparent about the way in which we put ourselves out there to the public and how we present our calendar, our agendas, the issues that we cover on an annual basis. And a couple Saturdays ago was the start in that process. Our goal here is to create a recurring annual calendar that we can release on a regular basis to the public that gives an advance view when you take a look at what our scheduled meetings are, what the agenda items will be for those meetings. We can't plan for everything, of course, but we can plan in a little bit more routine of a way for those items that recur on an annual basis, the task force reports, the budget, the superintendent's evaluation, so on and so forth, and then fill in the gaps with the issues that we know will be arising. And of course, just coming on the heels of the budget, we know that we're going to have an interest in how that budget is being allocated just as soon as kids come back to school in the fall. So again, you're going to be hearing more from us on that. The hope, I'll call it an aspirational hope right now, is that we turn these retreats into something a little more frequent within the committee's schedule. Right now we're looking at meeting again in June, and we may meet as frequently as on a quarterly basis to continue refining our practices and our calendar. And as I may have mentioned earlier, and it's certainly made clear in the minutes from that meeting, those meetings are open to the public, and they'll continue to be, and we welcome your comments in that regard. The other item I wanted to touch on briefly is the state budget. As many of you may be aware, the House released its version of the state budget today, and there was some good news in that budget. We didn't get everything that we're necessarily looking for at the city and at the district level, but there are increases in a couple of areas. One would be the charter reimbursement line item in the House budget. I believe it was approximately $8 or $9 million increase from what the governor had proposed. And there were also proposed increases in homeless funding as well as the circuit breaker. So as you'll recall, those of you that were watching the March 28th meeting, we had a presentation from our legislative advocate partners at the city on the current state of affairs with respect to the mayor's legislative package and the state budget that's pending on Beacon Hill right now. And at that meeting, we had issued a call to action. We certainly want to engage with our parents, with our students, and with our teachers in advocating for more funds for the district, as well as public education statewide, as well as our partners in other cities and towns that are being affected by the current budget. What we also planned to do was send a communication up to the State House advocating for specific items in the budget and on the legislative agenda to be passed. And that letter now has gone through one edit, and we're making some amendments to it as we speak, given the House's release of the budget today, to take that into account. And we'll be sending that off very shortly, and we'll make that a public document. Are there any other comments or items for discussion on the superintendent's report? We're hearing none. I'll entertain a motion to receive the superintendent's report.
So,
Ms. Robinson, that's a second from Dean Robinson. Any discussion or objection to the motion? Any objection to approving the superintendent's report by unanimous consent? Hearing none, the motion carries. Okay, we're moving on, and the order of our agenda is a little bit different tonight. Normally, this is the point where we move on to public comment, but as you may have heard earlier in the superintendent's report, we have one report tonight from Dr. Makiba McCreary, our Managing Director of External Affairs, who has double booked herself, and she's due courtside at TD Garden later this evening to present the Educator of the Year Awards on behalf of the district. So we have elected to allow her report to be presented right now. She's going to be approaching the the desk along with our Director of the Department of Neighborhood Development, Ms. Sheila Dillon from the City of Boston, to give us a presentation on the Columbia Point school properties adjacent to the Dever and McCormick schools in South Boston. Ms. McCreary, please proceed.
Thank you. And we appreciate this accommodation, so thank you very much. This presentation is really a precursor to what I envision will end up being hopefully many others as we move through the rebuilding of the Boston Public Schools. This is an example of a way that we can take advantage of existing space and think about public-private partnerships in a really impactful way. So I just wanted to preface this next conversation with that. There is currently, and I'm actually going to go to this slide first, there is currently a space that is adjacent to the McCormick and Dever schools that you can see on your presentation that is outlined in red. And there's an opportunity for us to consider separating that space, that land usage, and pursuing a different way of thinking about it. And the rationale for doing this is that it would actually maximize an existing asset. Currently on that land, there's a basketball court and there's a baseball diamond. All of our space, and I don't know if Avery is still with us, but I'm sure that he would attest to the fact that in terms of athletic space and in terms of just outdoor space, we are at a dearth across the city. And so this is a space that is absolutely used but underutilized. And what I mean by that is that there are places across the city where we have development happening that are not going to necessarily be aligned to what the Boston Public Schools would need. This is an opportunity for us to get ahead of a development and really help inform what we would like to have grow there. So the other piece of this that I think is really important is on this slide, which illustrates that in spite of anything that we would be doing through Build BPS, which, as you know, is an ongoing conversation, and we haven't made any decisions yet about any of these properties or school buildings, we could actually make decisions about this piece of land separately without impacting any other future decisions. The other really important part of this is that it would be available and it would be accessible in whatever form it takes to, within a 3-mile radius, frankly, 50 schools, but even if you went in tighter to that, to 1-mile radius, there's at least 15 to 20 schools that would be able to easily take advantage of yet another developed space. We, at this point, would imagine that there is an opportunity for a lot of community input. We would really like school committee to have input into this. So this is really the first of likely several presentations, but it's really the first time that we've even entertained something like this. So we wanted to at least start the conversation. Chief Dillon is here with me, who's going to help talk about not only the, this is not only a public-private partnership, but it's a public-public partnership. Because what would happen is we would take several steps to subdivide this piece of land, and then we would have D&D take over the process of putting out to an RFP for soliciting responses for what that land usage might be. There are some very specific parameters that BPS would put in place. For example, we would have to be the significant partner in usage. We would have to have a lot of input into the final sort of design of what that looks like, and we would absolutely want our community, both surrounding the Dever and the McCormick, but also our larger community, to have input into what the end design looks like. So there are several steps to this process, and Chief Dillon is really the expert when it comes to the part of the process that takes place with D&D, but I want to highlight the first 4 for you. Because the first thing that would need to happen is that the school committee would have to vote to actually subdivide the land. I want to highlight that that is not in finality. So it doesn't mean that once that happens, we lose all control over this process. As a matter of fact, if in the end what we get back from the RFP process doesn't feel like it's what the district would want to entertain, we could actually walk away from this process at that point. So I want to be clear that my understanding, and you can certainly clarify that at no point in these steps do we make a commitment to moving forward with anything that's finalized. And so the school committee would first vote to do this subdivision, and then there would be a draft RFP that would start to get designed. It would be designed in parallel process with input from school committee, the Dever-McCormick community, the Columbia Point community, and the broader stakeholder community across the city, because as you saw on the map, this will have an impact, hopefully, and potentially in a positive way for all of our schools in some way, shape, or form. And as a side note, you know that we travel a great distance for our schools to participate in anything that has an outdoor or athletic or recreational space. So that will probably remain true even in this case. That draft RFP would then end up going back to the community once it had gelled, and at that point D&D would take over the process.
Yes, so good evening. D&D runs these processes for surplus land or buildings that the city, that come to us. And once we get input from the school committee, the adjacent schools, the neighborhood, everybody's happy with the language, then we advertise for someone to come forward with ideas and potentially develop the site. And when I say development, I don't mean, I don't mean necessarily buildings. I mean, even if someone was going to come forward and say, we would like to build an athletic facility or outdoor classrooms or whatever it might be, whatever you in the community have identified, we put that out, we advertise it, we get responses, and then that starts yet another community process with you, with the community, the surrounding community, and stakeholders. And then if everybody's, very, very clear that there's one way to go forward, there's one proposal that really excites, then we designate that team, and they go forth and have so much time to actually make it a reality. Once again, if they don't, the land would go back to the school department. So there's performance and check-ins on these processes.
In many ways, I think this really speaks to two challenges that we're going to continue to have as we pursue the Build BPS planning, which is we're not going to create more of a footprint in the city for open spaces. It is what it is. We have what we have. And two, this really pushes us to think about how school communities might really partner and be collaborative in their use of space as well, in really proactive ways and not in ways that feel, frankly, like they are conciliatory or, they've given something up. But really, this is the way of the future in my mind, and I think that this would really prove to be a model for a lot of other opportunities to be collaborative around space moving forward. So the request for the school committee action is to actually subdivide the site, and we would obviously come back for a second presentation, answer questions that come up in the meantime, and then ask for a vote. So that D&D can issue the RFP for the parcel. We would ask that the RFP language restrict the review of responses that only benefit the Boston Public School community, and that the land would be returned to Boston Public Schools if there was not an acceptable final outcome of this process. This is also a school community, I should end by saying, or two school communities and surrounding school communities that are incredibly deserving of an additional investment. Not only the neighborhoods themselves are really very diverse, but there is a saturation of public housing quite close to this location. There also are populations within our schools that require some of the most intensive social emotional supports and services. And I think those are also really compelling reasons why it would be great to use this as a model for moving forward in other school communities as well on public-private partnerships. I'll close there, and then we'll share any answers of questions, and what we can't answer, we will commit to coming back with answers to.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. McCreary and Chief Dillon. I'll open it up now to members for questions. Ms. Oliver Davila.
Thank you. Thank you for the information. I just had a couple of quick questions in terms of the actual usage right now. So it's outdoor, and I'm just wondering how it affects the actual community if it's outdoor and people can access it now, and whatever ends up being there, if it is similar, basketball, whatever that looks like. If part of the RFP, I guess maybe it's up to us, I don't know, would stipulate that the community can actually use this also in the evenings on the weekends, because we don't want to also take away, we want to obviously give something that's deserving, but also not take away a community asset that's already being used.
I can't speak to the usage, although I hear it is underutilized it's a very large parcel with only a couple of activities. But yes, the RFP can stipulate that we're looking for a use that's going to be important to the adjacent schools, but also the community at large. We want to open at night. So we can be very specific on what we're looking for. Whether we get everything we want, it remains to be seen, but we can certainly put our aspirations down on paper.
Great, thank you. And I wanted to ask Dr. Chang, so for the community engagement piece around this, who would be in charge of that?
So the first aspect of it will be in our hands. So it will be our Office of Engagement working in partnership with Dr. McCurry's office. But as we make the handoff, it will be in the hands of D&D.
Okay.
But we would run meetings and things. I assume that the school department would be there, present,
Absolutely.
answering questions. So we would do it in partnership.
The reason I'm just asking is based on the current changes with the Office of Engagement, I just wanted to make sure that we're very clear. Anyway, I know we're going to have another meeting with them presenting, because I think it will be important to just have criteria. And, you know, I use this as an example of we need to make sure that we're very clear on the things that the Office of Engagement is working on, given the change. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Oliver Davila. Ms. Robinson.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to follow up when you was talking about the two schools that are there now. What are their thoughts about this idea, and do they have ideas that they would like to propose going forward?
I'm 199% sure that they do, and we would take that part of the community engagement process very seriously. To date, this is the first conversation that we've actually had, because currently we really don't want to engage in a feedback session if indeed the school committee does not want us to subdivide the land.
But are they aware that this idea is even coming forward at this point, or do they have no idea that we're even?
I have to be honest, I don't know. I'm not sure. I would imagine that there's a good chance that the answer is no.
Okay, so as we go forward, at what point would be after our vote, that they would then
Well,
be asked?
they would know now. I mean, it's a public
know now,
conversation now. And yes, immediately after the school committee makes a decision about whether or not we should pursue this, that would be the first community that we would engage.
Okay, I guess my only concern is because they live there and this is in their neck of the woods, that, you know, a conversation to at least know that something like this is even being considered, so that they don't find it as a surprise.
Understood.
You know,
Yeah.
or have had an opportunity to, you know, I think it gets back to a lot of our stuff around community engagement in terms of cart before the horse.
Yeah.
So tomorrow morning, some people will be talking about it, but
That's
so
absolutely true.
Okay,
Mhm.
thank you.
I would think that, and I'm not speaking for the school department, but those conversations would happen in a more of a closed setting to get their feedback, and not in a more of community-wide meeting, just because we want to hear from them and really give them a chance as direct abutters to really, you know, shape this proposal.
Yeah, I was thinking more, it's just a courtesy in terms of, we go to school here, we live here, to know that others are thinking about the use of space, and to be part of that early on and not after the fact, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. Dean Robinson.
Yes, thank you. And thanks to my colleagues. You are tracking engagement. Engagement was my kind of focus as well. So I want to maybe just ask some practical steps as well. Is it even possible, because tonight is a public meeting, some may be watching and say, wow, news to me. Is there a way to craft a message tonight, tomorrow, to say, hey, you know, Denver community, this is what's taking place. just again to Ms. Robinson's point, there's a courtesy piece in this, but there's also a sense of as many layers of engagement as possible every step of the way, whether we have as much information as we have or not, just so that we're asking questions about process. They're probably asking even more questions, about process. So as a courtesy, Dr. Chang, if it's possible, if we could have some communication.
Absolutely. This evening, we will craft a message that will be sent to both communities explaining that this conversation was had at the Boston School Committee meeting, and that we'll lay out the process starting with them first.
Okay, yeah, that would be great. That would be great.
And just to clarify, when I said I legitimately don't know, it's very possible. There's been a lot of facility conversations, a lot of partnership with the UMass system and their land with McCormick Endeavor, and there very well could be some ideation that has already taken place. I just haven't been a part of it.
Yeah.
So
no, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Usually families know about things before they even come to us. And so there's the meetings before the meetings, and that can be the beauty of neighborhood conversations. But since we are a body that has to make some of these major decisions, we're also wanting to add the layer of engagement just to ensure. So I'd appreciate that. The other piece that I was going to ask was also with Ms. Oliver Davila's question regarding Office of Engagement, just because since that is in flux and I guess the hiring is in flux. So if there's a process that's taking place where this office is going to be managing the process, but the people are in flux, will possibly a future meeting, you'll lay out the plan of what the Office of Engagement will be tasked to do and who.
Before the end of the school year, the Office Engagement reorganization will be completed.
Okay.
One of the main purposes of the reorganization is to do exactly this type of work.
Okay.
To build more capacity to do citywide engagements, because we haven't had the resources to be able to do so. So part of Assistant Superintendent Monica Roberts' theory of action with this reorganization is to build more communication capacity, have folks who know particular neighborhoods throughout the city who will work in partnership with schools and central office to do this sort of broad convening, because we just don't have that right now. We've struggled with it, and we've acknowledged that.
Okay, so that's helpful to know, the what and the who, because we recognize that sometimes community engagement, there can be some gaps, and we want to try to create the stop gaps. So this is helpful to know the what and the who in the process. So thank you again for the update. I am very encouraged by this public-public partnership that you talked about, and why it is really critical to these very deserving schools. So thank you.
Thank you, Dean Robinson. Dr. Coleman.
Good evening. Thank you for your time, and enjoy the game tonight once you're gone. I have a question as to, are these steps, is this the formal legislative approach we have to follow?
Anytime the city puts out a resource for redevelopment, we have to follow state guidelines around procurement. We just have found over the years that if we have a really good, robust dialogue with lots of stakeholders, put things down on paper for review, and then advertise widely for the best ideas, it is a process that we do, every single week at the Department of Neighborhood Development, and it works. It works pretty well. I mean, once in a while, we goof up, but that's rare. So it does seem to work, and even though it takes a longer time, because dialogue and conversation takes time, it works well. And then once everybody's happy, then we do have very clear timelines for whoever we've worked with, because a good idea is only good if it gets implemented.
So what's part of the process requires us to make a commitment to the subdivision before that process goes forward?
It's difficult for D&D, and I'm not a lawyer, I'd have to get a legal opinion on this, but it would be difficult for the Department of Neighborhood Development to start having conversations, even with the school department, about a potential sale, even if it was, if we didn't own if the city didn't control the property, if it was in the hands of the school department. It's a little bit neater, But once again, if we didn't end up with a proposal that everybody felt really good about, then we wouldn't go forward, and the land would revert to you all.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Dr.
I have to admit, I'm not 100% comfortable with that answer, but I understand it.
Okay. And if you like, we can get some more legal guidance on your question, because I think your question was, can you do this without subdividing? And I don't have an answer to that. I know that it's, so let me get an answer for that. I think that's a good
I
idea.
experienced, once you go partly in the conversation, it's harder to step back from that commitment at that point if we're unsatisfied, because there'll be a lot of people committed to an idea, and it puts us in an awkward position to make a pre-commitment, like a prenuptial.
Understood. So I think it's worthy of us getting a legal opinion on that. You know, can the Department of Neighborhood Development talk about a process where we don't control the resource? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we can do that. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Coleman. And thank you, Chief Dillon, for that offer as well. And, you know, based on my limited understanding of the way in which this might work, you know, this is, as you point out, something that you do every day and that your department does every day with respect to city parcels all across the city. And so, you know, thinking about, first of all, the approach that would put the professionals in the city that are most knowledgeable about offering out a request for proposal on a parcel of city-owned or municipal land, that appeals to me. Putting aside the idea of knowing necessarily everything that's going on in the process to begin with. But I think it's also helpful to maybe roll back a couple slides and think about the bigger picture from with respect to timeline that you've laid out here. And my understanding is this is the first step in about a 6 to 9 month estimate for a timeline in this public process and this request for proposal process. And when we say 6 to 9 months, looking at those next steps, that includes the public process where you would reach out to the school communities and the abutting communities. That's the drafting of the RFP, the release of the RFP, the evaluation of whatever gets returned, and then the decision about whether or not what we've received is in fidelity to what our needs are, both as a district and as a city. Do I have all that correct?
That is correct. It's not getting the redevelopment done, but it's actually getting through the point where you've selected someone that you want to work with.
Okay. And so that's very helpful. And thinking about that then, you know, you've laid out a number of the points where we can have both our own internal engagement assets in the district reach out to our school communities, as well as the way in which DND, once we took the necessary steps that we would need to in order to empower you to do this, would reach out in its normal course to the affected communities. And so that's very helpful, and it's helpful for us to understand that we're going to see you at least 1 or 2 or maybe 3 more times. So what I want to understand then is, you know, we've talked very broadly about what our, and I'm not even clear how to say "our" because it may be the city, it may be the district, it may be, you know, just this concept that's floating out there with respect to this parcel. Our vision for what, you know, this parcel might be able to provide for the schools as well as the community at large. And so I wonder if there's been any further conversation that you can share with us that's occurred that could give us some shape about, you know, what the best or current line of thinking might be for use there, because it's helpful to I think for us to know what the district might be able to tell us is what our needs are beyond just simply athletics or community space and so on.
We can both share this. I will start by saying if the parcel were just blank and there was nothing there, I actually think that it really would genuinely be a very open, collaborative sort of genesis of concepts. And I'm sure that in there, one of those concepts would probably be something related to athletics. But because it has a current use, whether it's dilapidated or brand new, it's there and it's being used, I'm sure of this. And so I think that's part of the reason that some conversations have really focused on, without taking something away from a community, even if it's not perfect, it is there and it is something that's of value. The first concept would be, is the demand going to be to make that better? And if so, what would that look like? And if that's one of the pieces of considerations, then it does narrow a little bit more what some of the other things are that come in. But I think we have to honor that existing is a resource to the community that we don't want to eliminate without a lot of really deep discussion. You've seen a lot more development than I have, so you probably have
Yeah, no, I think it's really going to come down to the conversations with the school department and the community. So I wouldn't want to get out ahead of that. I certainly think, though, given looking at the parcel, and if you do have a chance to see it, and I'm sure many of you have, it is very, very underutilized and only utilized for a few months of the year. I mean, certainly we could see something that is used 360 days a year and that is much more vibrant, and multiple schools and multiple communities could use. So you see it, I really see it. It could be a very large gathering place for lots of students and young people. But I don't want to speak for the community.
Well, Chief Dillon, I think it might also be helpful for us to think about, what we, or at least address what we might not want to use that land for. Sure. And so, it's helpful, I think, in this conversation to think about, what is the land that's around that parcel, right? There's a lot of changes happening in Columbia Point right now.
Our request for proposals, if I could, say what the community, the collective communities want to see and what they don't want to see. And, that's communities don't hesitate telling us what they don't want to see. And my hunch is, because it has had some athletic use, communities are probably going to say they don't want housing development there, and they don't want an office building, and they don't, whatever it is that they don't want to see. And we put that into the RFP as well, within reason. I mean, you can't say you don't want anything, because then why do it? But we do put in RFPs things that we've heard from the community that people really want to stay away from. So that can be spelled out clearly.
And even taking that a step further, I mean, when you think about some of the specific developments in that adjacent area, you've got the Globe property, and I believe that's going to be a primarily retail mixed-use complex. You've got the Bayside Expo Center that's across the street that will soon be going on sale. And when you think about the highest and best use for those properties, and you also think about the housing crunch that we have in our district, or in our city, excuse me, it helps aid the conversation in thinking about, okay, we've got open space, we've got something that's adjacent to a school, we've got a school that doesn't necessarily have the best athletic facilities, maybe doesn't have the best community gathering space. I think that helps us, and I'm sort of rattling these things off for folks that are paying attention in this conversation tonight, and for my fellow members to really think creatively about what it is that we might be using that land for. And so if I've said anything that's out of line or
No, you haven't, and you've brought one, I think, fact to life. There is going to be a lot of future development in that general vicinity. There are going to be developers looking to provide community benefit and meet obligation. So getting out in front of this now and having a vision for this site is good if you want a public-private partnership. Sometimes we do it too late, and the developers have done what they're going to do, and they've gone on. And so I think the timing is good if we're going to get private resources.
Okay, very good. Something else. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Something else that I think bears mentioning as well, I think you mentioned it earlier in your presentation, Dr. McCreary, was the fact that this, if we are to convey this parcel of land, that wouldn't necessarily prevent us from expanding the Dever and McCormick buildings. And those are, in fact, expandable buildings. Maybe not both of them, but I know at least one of them is, based on our recent facilities master plan inventory.
That's my understanding.
Okay. So this, and would this space wouldn't necessarily be needed in order to do an expansion to those existing buildings?
Correct.
Okay, that's very helpful.
And we know a lot about those buildings. We've actually spent a lot of time thinking about them because of both their location and what the kind of condition that they're in, and frankly, where they're located in relationship to the UMass system and the other adjacent resources.
Right.
And this we haven't really talked deeply about this, but this does supplant a need for resources that the district would otherwise be having to identify if it wanted to develop that land independently.
Understood. So one other item I want to note is, you've mentioned public-private partnership, and I think you used the phrase public-public partnership, of course, with our city partners. But my question is, when we think about some of the uses of this this land, is it possible that a nonprofit organization would be the one that steps up? As we think about athletics, the first groups that come to mind for me are community facilities. Would be, the YMCA or the Boys and Girls Club or something along those lines. Or, I'm not sure, I think it's Roxbury Community College that runs the Reggie Lewis Athletic Center. But those types of facilities, those types of organizations would seem to be natural fits for what we've discussed to date. And so, in speaking specifically, again, just for, clarity of folks that are following along, when we think about a public-private partnership, that doesn't preclude a nonprofit organization. That doesn't require a profit-making venture to bid on this land.
No.
Oh, no, not at all. Private can be nonprofit, certainly. And probably the entities most interested in developing a site like this will be a well-established nonprofit.
Okay. Thank you. Dean Robinson, did you have an additional comment?
Not necessarily, but as the wheels are turning, I think it is really great to just hear the multiple opportunities. As I think about what a community engagement process would look like for these schools and asking them kind of the wish list, what do you want and what don't you want? That stuck with me, and I'd love for that to somehow be framed in these community gatherings, because athletics is important, the social emotional needs of the students, having a place for them to go. You said, having a place more than 300 days of the year. So, indoor sporting facilities or something of that nature is just, it really sounds exciting to think about what the future could hold for not just these schools, which is so critical, but for more schools to partner with them and have usage. So again, thank you for the vision that you're casting, but then also thank you for the desire to engage, the community in a really thoughtful way too.
Thoughtful words to end on.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dean Robinson. Thank you as well, Dr. McCreary. Thank
Welcome.
you, Chief Dillon. We look forward to hearing from you again on this this new venture.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
I'll see you at mile 20.
Thanks. And let us know who won tonight, okay? The game and the educator. All right, thank you once again. We'll move on to general public comment. Ms. Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Lecanto. The public comment period is an opportunity for parents and other concerned parties to make brief presentations to the school committee on pertinent school issues. Questions on specific school matters are not answered at this time, but are referred to the superintendent for later response. Questions on specific policy matters are not answered at this time, but may be the subject of later discussion by the committee. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to speak, and I will remind you when you have 1 minute remaining and then 30 seconds. Those who require interpretation services will be allotted an additional 2 minutes. Speakers may not reassign their time to others. Large groups addressing the same topic are encouraged to consolidate their remarks or choose a spokesperson to provide testimony. Written testimony is appreciated and encouraged. Any signage must not prohibit the participation of others. Please state your name and affiliation before you begin. TV cameras will only record speakers who face the committee. We have 15 speakers this evening, and we'll begin with our youngest students, Zariah Ramos, and she'll be followed by Michael Eugene.
You can take your seat right at that table there. Thank you. You'll be up here one day.
Hi, my name is Zaria. I am a student at the Higginson School. We need a playground at our school because it's boring to just run on concrete, and we have nothing to play with. I wish we had a playground so we can play on the swings. We can climb the monkey bars. We can race around the track with our friends. Imagine a fun and safe place to grow and play. These are pictures that students drew of them playing in the garden of the playground.
Thank you, Ms. Ramos.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Michael Eugene.
Michael. They want a mic up here. Come join me.
What are you going to say?
My name is Michael. I go to the Hagerstown School. I need a playground for me and my friends. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Eugene.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll hear from Robert Jenkins, and he'll be followed by Lincoln Larmond and Marie Mullen.
Good afternoon. That's going to be a hard act to follow. My name is Robert Jenkins. I am alumni. Well, first of all, I want to talk about the Matter Hunt, that process where, I commended you guys 2 weeks ago on the community process around the issue of renaming the school, among other things, and that has turned into a positive outcome. I'm here today to also talk about the Jeremiah Burke. I know that Dr. McCready made a proposal, but I think that down the line in the Grove Hall area, if there's any land, there needs to be something developed in that community, because as you saw in the paper around the Jeremiah Burke, those kids have no kind of space. They have a long way to go. So there are schools there, maybe that's something that needs to be talked about. But I'm here tonight regards to I'm a school site alumni, class of 1978 from Madison Park. I'm also alumni president and school site council member. And I know there's been some issues at the school, but I just want to, when we're talking about engagement, community, school, there's some stuff lacking there. I know that there will be meetings in the near future, but it just pains me that as a school site council member, we had no knowledge or we saw anything around any input regarding the budget. We got the money that were being allocated, but there was no process of parents, BTU members, alumni at the school, which is causing a lot of problems. I want to say this, that the executive director, Kevin McCaskill, has done a great job at that school. I've been a member there for 5 years as a school site council member and all the above I just spoke about. And to see him walk around that school and know where every kid is supposed to be, every kid's name, it's just, amazing. We have a food truck because we have the best culinary arts program in the state. And these kids have still prospered over the unstable of administration. But now you have a guy who's there who's doing the job. He had dual roles. We need a headmaster. We need Kevin McCaskill there as the executive director. But now I'm hearing that there's a possibility, and I don't know because I go by state, it's true facts, but that they want, that there's a proposal for an alternative education program to be at the school. Now, don't get me wrong, I am all for alternative adult education, but not at Madison Park. I mean, there's got to be a way we can find some space, but the school is doing well, and I hope it does, and I hope that process is done with the school site community, with the school site council, so that we can remedy these problems. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Jenkins.
Next, we'll hear from Lincoln Larmond, followed by Marie Mullen and Luis Elisa.
Good evening.
Good evening, folks. First of all, let me say congratulations to our chairperson, Lacanto. Congrats. Good to be in front of you guys tonight. In the interest of time, I'm just going to read directly from my notes. Try to make this a 3 minutes thing. So what I'm reading from is really a synopsis from a letter I sent this body back on March 23rd, and also around the budget, and also additional comments around the naming of the school. So of all the challenges that the Matterhorn faces, by far the most critically pronounced relates to social and emotional learning, and specifically the impact of trauma. This is evidenced by the chronic instances of trauma management daily requiring constant attention from staff. Now, when you look at the Matterhorn's website, the first paragraph describes the Matterhorn as really a school that specializes in trauma-sensitive practices. So given the context, the larger question for us is, how are the BPS and Boston School Committee supporting the leadership and staff at the Matterhorn? We believe there needs to be dedicated resources that provide trauma support to school-based personnel, and other trauma-informed programming to meet the needs of students and their families must be afforded to school for school year 2090. So interestingly enough, the school is designated a trauma-sensitive practices school, yet currently has no dedicated trauma specialist, no behavioral specialist, no full-time social worker, no identifiable trauma and stabilization support action plan from which to operate, and a part-time psychologist who unquestionably has neither the time nor the mandate to meet the needs of all the students. Now, this is not a matter of the leadership of the Matterhorn not being proactive. This is Walter and Joelle care deeply for the students there and are doing a noble job. Rather, this is a question of whether BPS and BSC, through their oversight function, provide the necessary budgetary and otherwise supports that the school needs to effectively teach the students. There should be, in our view, a dedicated position at the Matterhorn whose exclusive role is to design and evaluate clinical plans and strategies that respond to the daily and specific trauma needs of the student body. Taking this one step further, there should be the Office of Stabilization and Support at the BPS, and certainly at the Matterhorn, as part of the principal's staff, with a full-time director and staff of full-time trauma support specialists assigned to it who are trained in social and emotional learning, trauma support, and clinical and behavioral plans designed in an educational setting, as well as other strategies to meet the needs of the trauma-impacted population while recommending and coordinating how all staff can play a realistically appropriate and feasible role. Support for social and emotional learning are a critical need. The fact that the Matterhorn is not receiving partnership funding or soft landing funding for partnerships is particularly taxing on the Matterhorn's faculty. The 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. extended daytime, for example, is a critical time and particularly stressful for staff.
Mr. Lamond, I'm afraid you're past your time.
I'm past my time?
Yes.
Again, let's finish this last statement. So the faculty, I believe, require additional staff, and particularly for this unstructured time, to better manage the way with programming. As I mentioned earlier, because this school doesn't receive soft landing funds, it's really difficult to hire the kind of partners you need if you can't pay them. So we recommend strongly that part of the budget process really looks at providing additional funding to provide for staffing around social and emotional learning. Thank you.
Thank you. And you mentioned that you've emailed these comments to us, Mr. Lamont.
I did. In particular, yes. In particular, I want to support the superintendent's recommendation around naming the school the Madahunt Elementary School. There's a lot of supporting narrative around why I think that should in fact be the case.
Okay.
But yes, I support fully the superintendent's and principal recommendation to name the school Madahunt Elementary School.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Marie Mullen, which will be followed by Louis Elisa.
Good evening, Dr. Chang and members of the school committee. Before I begin, I'd like to formally thank Mr. John Hanlon, Mr. Rob Consalvo, and Mr. Jonathan Sproul for their commitment and assistance in helping the Higginson in our pursuit to build a playground in our school community. I am presenting on behalf of the students and staff as we begin the process of raising awareness for our need for a playground. As you know, the Higginson School opened just 5 years ago and serves students in K-0 through grade 2 with and without disabilities, including English language learners in a fully inclusive setting. We have established a strong foundation and a thriving school culture that is built on doing whatever it takes to keep the work we do going, flowing, and progressively moving for each and every student. We continue to strive to provide our students with optimal personal and educational experiences centered on our core values of respect, responsibility, and stamina. Through our journey and our successes, we have our struggles, and one of our struggles has been during our recess block. To put it in perspective, between September 2016 through April 2018, we have 113 documented incidences out in the recess yard that required us to call the school nurse back to our building to tend to students who needed medical attention. This is just one source of data, and in addition, there have been multiple instances where students received treatments for minor cuts, bumps, and bruises. Recess is vital to our children's social and physical development. There are multiple studies on how recess impacts student learning and social development. In our bi-weekly CBHM meeting, recess is always at the center of our conversations. Presently, we have a concrete asphalt slab that is used for recess, physical education, and whole school assemblies. As concerned staff, the safety of all students is a daily worry. Without a playground, engaging inclusive structures, equipment, and materials, there is limited opportunities for students to build on positive social relationships. With limited choices, this often leads to conflict and situational aggression. We are hopeful we will have a playground soon, and our students will have the opportunities to make positive choices, engage in pro-social interactions that will lead to global developmental success. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And Ms. Mullen, and for the other folks here that are from the Higginson tonight, I noticed you had a number of posters that you presented earlier. We couldn't really see those, and so if you can take some pictures of them and submit them to the school committee for our review, we'd much appreciate that. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Louis Elisa. I am a member of the Friends of Madison Park High School. I am also the president of the Garrison Triad and Neighborhood Association and the former president of the Boston branch NAACP. I come tonight with a very pressing issue, and I appreciate the time that you've made available. I was reluctant to come, but the situation has been created has provided us little or no opportunity to do something other than to bring this to this body. Madison Park has been through a lot of changes, and those changes have been very traumatic on our students. The impact of the decisions that have been made has been very harmful to the quality of our students and the things that they've been trying to produce for many years. At this point, we're stuck with a situation where the school is once again being put in a situation where its resources are being scattered for all sorts of reasons other than the progressive growth of the school. The challenge that we face today is that Madison Park leadership, the executive director of the school, has lost his authority to do what he was hired to do. The situation we're in is that the temporary leadership that's placed in there is making changes that are not consistent with the goals that have been established by the school, by the parents, by the stakeholders, and by the community. We are now trying to rectify this because this is a problem that has been continuous. For the past 5 years, the Friends of Madison Park, along with other groups and organizations, including NACP, Prince Hall Masons, and others who have a stake in what's going on, have been trying to get Madison Park to work as it's been designed to work. It is the only facility, it is the only school in this city that will give our young people an opportunity to leave with a vocation, a skill that will allow them to take part in the development and growth that's going on in the city. The failure of this department, the failure of this school committee to be engaged and involved as to determine the benefits and the positive effects on our children is unconscionable. It can't continue. With the growth of this city, with $20 billion worth of growth in the city, our young people should have an opportunity to come out with skills and with the ability to take part in the healthcare career, take part in the automobile career, take part in the major growth careers. So we're asking you today, we've had a meeting with the superintendent, and we asked them to stop the change, the aggressive changes that are taking place without the role of the executive secretary, the executive director, and that we put our communities back in place. So today we're asking that you take this effort to speak on behalf of the children of our community that needs and deserves this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Amini Onohu, followed by Jovan Lassette and John Mudd.
Good evening,
Good
committee.
evening.
My name is Amini Onohu, and I'm a teacher at the Higginson K through 2nd grade. Earlier, you heard from 2 students at the school, and they took all of my talking points. So I'm going to keep it real small and practical. At first, I thought about coming up here, speaking with fervor and yelling, but it's too late for that, and the microphones are loud. Then I thought about compelling and speaking like this, but I don't think this is a matter that we should have to beg for. The students earlier, Principal Mullen, have asked that you press a button, sign a paper, give us a thumbs up on getting a playground. Principal Mullen talked a little bit about the dangerous situation that not having a playground is creating. I'm going to talk to you a little bit of it more. From March, April until June, I will sacrifice 3 of my 5 lunches manning recess, a time where I should go out, have a fresh breath to get prepared to engage these kids for the remainder of the day. A lot of times I spend 20 minutes out at my lunch, if not the whole lunch, and this is a chorus that all of the teachers in my school are facing, to ensure that our kids are safe. Our nurse's office is inundated with injuries, so that leaves us to put the Band-Aids, to call parents. Playing devil's advocate, somebody's mind might be saying, well, let's shut down the school and put the kids where there is a playground. That is not the issue. That is not the solution. The kids that we service, kids with and without disabilities, a lot of our students are new to the country, ELLs, and go through a silent period where they need a small, intimate community to thrive in. Very short, simple, and sweet. I saw a picture, and I saw it on the news when the mayor was opening the playground at the Hernandez. So I am practically asking you, we need that, our students need that as well. We do not send them into the building without computers, books, and pencils to exercise their mind. We need something for them to exercise their bodies if you would like to continue having state champions on your stage. So please, thank you. We need a playground. Push the button on that, please. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, Dr. Chang, Mr. Chairperson, and rest of the members of the school committee. My name is Javon Lissette. I am a resident, I am a Mattapan resident, a United States Marine Corps veteran, and a parent of 2 Boston Public School students at Boston Latin Academy. I come here today to talk about 2 things. As a Mattapan, 37-year resident of Mattapan, out of the 45 years I lived in Mattapan, Dorchester, as somebody who worked at the Mattahunt when I was a child with the ABCD job, as somebody who's a major stakeholder in Mattapan, I come to talk about 2 things we got in Mattapan. The trauma issue, which Lincoln spoke about earlier. I mean, the letter he gave you spoke in detail about it. In short, we can't have a school where we promote it being a trauma school, and we don't provide the resources. As you all know, y'all know this better than I am because you guys are educational experts. Kids with trauma bring certain issues to the classroom that affects not only their learning, but learning of other children. So therefore, you know that's gonna happen when you promote this school as a trauma school. So if you promote a trauma school, simply, you need to put the resources in there. And I know the mayor got some money for schools such as that, but based on what's put in the news, the little resources that they gave, that's pretty much what the Mattahunt needs. It's not gonna be sufficient, it's not gonna be enough for all the schools who needs it. And you know a lot of the schools in all the community Boston needs it. So please, provide the resources. That's one reason the Mattahunt closed, because we didn't provide the resources the first time. So now that we're opening it again, let's provide the resources. Don't set it up to fail. That's not good for the Mattahunt community. It's not good for Boston, please. Now the other thing, as a Marine, as somebody who was born in Haiti and came here at the age of 4, I respect Toussaint Louverture more than just about everybody, okay, based on what he's done. I know a lot of my Haitian folks and some other folks, a lot of other supporters want to change the Mattahunt school name to Toussaint Louverture. But I can tell you that myself, I don't think that would be the best move. I think that would be an insult.
20 seconds.
Sure. I think that would be an insult to the Mattahunt tribe. We're already taking so much away from the Native Americans. So to remove the name, the Mattahunt from the school, it would be an insult to the Mattahunt tribe. It would add to the erasing of their memory, and that wouldn't be good. It would be an insult to the justices that Toussaint Louverture fought for when he worked towards freeing the slaves in Haiti in 1791. So I think we can have if we can have named the school the Mattahunt Elementary School, and then also part of the school can be named Toussaint Louverture Dual Language Program, something like that, or institution. And then, most importantly, what those stakeholders who wants to name something to Toussaint Louverture, we can continue to work towards having a Toussaint Louverture center, which the community is working on. So that's what I have to say today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. After Mr. Mudd, we'll hear from Justin Petty and Peggy Wiesenberg.
Okay, John Mudd, advocate. Very quickly, I like to try to highlight 3 kind of different issues. First, I want to thank the Finance and Budget Department for following through and creating a program budget document for the next fiscal year. I mean, most of us know that the budget is policy, but when you see a line item budget, you don't know what it means. This is an effort by the department which lays out in some narrative form how you translate $1 billion into extended learning time, or programs for English language learners, or programs for special ed students, or turnaround schools. And I think that is crucially important for public understanding of what you are and the department is attempting to do for the children and the students in the system. I do have a couple of comments, and I'll take some detailed ones directly to the budget people. But for you, I still continue to be somewhat mystified that in the statements of the major mission and goals or priorities of the system, it doesn't specifically say reducing or eliminating the achievement gap. Now, it may be that that's implicit in most of the work of the department, but it seems to me that that kind of issue warrants highlighted, visible, prominent attention. I would also say there are other questions that a program budget could understand. For example, what are we doing in professional development? This is particularly an issue which has been fragmented among various departments, and some sort of focus of attention would be particularly important. How much are we investing? How successful is it? Where do we need to expand or retract? So I would suggest that. The whole issue of human capital, I think, is critically important, and as many of you know, diversity is an issue that I've been talking with you about for years. I know that the second issue I want to raise is, I'm sure you read the Globe article and perhaps the report by the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights and Economic Justice, which says that, in fact, I'll paraphrase, but it says Boston's teachers are no more diverse today than they were 10 years ago. Obviously, we're doing some good work, I know, but it's not enough. So what are we going to do to give this the kind of targeted attention it deserves? And finally, I'd like to follow up a little bit on the superintendent's mention of the NEEP report, which was reported in the Globe. I went online, and there is a huge 50-page document that I can see, which is a very detailed analysis that the department has produced, and I would hope that that could be the subject of your focused attention, maybe at the next meeting or soon in the future. The Globe did say that, if again paraphrasing, that there's a decline in performance of black students in both the 4th and 8th grades. That's just one example. Okay, so we can get these reports, and I've pled with you for many times. What's the past tense? Pleaded? Please, these reports can overwhelm us with data. What are the lessons we've learned from these reports, and what is the action that we're going to take in some detail? Thank you for letting me speak to you tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Justin Petty, and he'll be followed by Peggy Wiesenberg and Megan Sondergreger.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Justin Petty. I'm a professor and a resident of Roxbury. I'm also the father of Jolene Petty, who's over there. She's a 5-year-old student in K1 at the Henry Louis Higginson School. This is her first time in public school, in the public school system. My purpose tonight is to add my voice and support to the many that are advocating for a new playground at her school. The playground in its current state is not adequate. It lacks the amenities of a modern-day playground. There are no swings, no slides, jungle gyms, or anything of that sort at the school. We can all agree that having a well-designed and equipped playground would aid in the physical development of all of our children. If you have a chance, please go up to the school and take a look at the playground. Pictures don't do justice. You need to actually see it for yourself. Oftentimes, to avoid the buses in the morning, I would park my car at the bottom of the school on Walnut Avenue, and I would walk up the stairs, which is adjacent to the playground. You can't help but to notice that the playground looks incomplete. It is very inaccessible, and the surface is hard. I'm sure that the school nurse tends to many injuries as a result of our children playing on this type of surface. I would like to see a better and safer playground built for the school so that my daughter and all of the other children who attend the Higginson can have an enjoyable place to play. It is my understanding that there might be a grant available for funding. I'm asking you to please support it and please support the efforts of the Higginson School. Put yourselves in the shoes of a child for a moment and contemplate what your ideal playground would be like. That's the playground we need for our children at Higginson. Thank you.
Leaving.
Good
Good evening.
evening. I'm a parent of 3 Boston Public School graduates. As a parent, I helped literally, physically, and planning 3 playgrounds at 3 different schools. So I really appreciate the Higginson coming forward. I'm speaking in reaction to the report on the Columbia Road properties. All schools and all school properties belong to we, the people of Boston. The Boston School Committee, your body that you sit on, and Boston Public Schools are the stewards of those properties. This committee should be very leery, and I appreciate your questions, particularly those of Dean Coleman, about moving forward on a vote to subdivide the site and transfer land without the city presenting we, the people, with the 10-year educational and facilities master plan. We've talked about it. We've never seen it. Where is it? How can this committee continue to take actions piecemeal? What is the educational and facilities plan for the Dever K-5 and the McCormick 6-8, which was the DMC, the Dever McCormick? What is the plan for the surrounding land? Our city, as Chair Lecanto pointed out, is being gentrified, and South Boston is a hot real estate area now. Many of our schools have been converted to condos. Many schools have surrounding land that can be used for athletics, recess, gardening, and other educational uses for our BPS students. Why cede land and power to another agency, Public Facilities, whose mission is not education, to designate selected parcels for a long-term lease of the grounds? Educational justice requires equal access to involvement in government decision-making. Slide 6 suggests, number 1, the Boston School Committee votes to subdivide the site and surplus property to the care and custody of DND. Number 4, BPS and DND hold a meeting with the community. Isn't that backwards? When I was a kindergarten parent, our school parent council and community convened, came up with our idea, and then we convened different city offices to renovate all the lands around the Agassiz School. This body, under the prior superintendent, voted on December 2010 to close the Agassiz School, effective 2011, June 2011. It later moved the Mission Hill K-8 school, where my son attended, to that space. And now we don't know where that school's gonna be. Build Boston, as you said, when you voted to expand the Muniz, you wanted to see the details of where those schools would be. So I would be very careful in moving forward. And in closing, to quote Frederick Douglass, power concedes nothing without a demand. Hold on and come up with a vision with us for that land. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Riesenberg.
Good evening. My name is Megan Sonderegger. I'm an almost 20-year resident of Dorchester and a mother of 3 who are in different grades in 3 different schools in the city. The child I'd like to speak to you about tonight, or the school experience that I'd like to speak with you about, is she's a freshman at Boston Latin Academy. And I'm going to talk about my kid for a minute, and then we maybe talk about some greater issues. But she's kind of a miracle kid. She had a really traumatic birth. She was 3 pounds, got a ton of help and special ed and all this stuff, and she did great. She got into an exam school despite having, neuropsych tests indicate that she's got like a 90 percentile difference between her verbal and her math skills, and she did it. She got into an exam school. She also got into 2 private schools, but I chose to keep her in BPS because I wanted her to get special ed services. And I think Boston's done a really good job at the elementary school level at giving all kinds of kids the ability to function at their highest potential. And, I'm hearing the kids here who are, the schools, I heard the other school employees talking about how they have a mix of kids included in the classrooms with special ed and regular ed, and they have different needs. And my daughter was the beneficiary of some excellent special ed early on. So she arrives at Boston Latin Academy full of hope and dreams, and immediately we realize that the school has no ability to even be in compliance with her IEP. She has gotten 0 hours of special ed math instruction. It's not just her. There are 65 students at the school, is my understanding. I'm not privy to every student's issues and IEP details. Surely some of them, in addition to my daughter, have math-specific IEPs. They don't have any math special ed support. And my fear is not just for my daughter. My fear is that we're trying to close gaps, we're trying to expand access, and in a way, my daughter's a success story. When she was born, they were telling us about all these permanent disabilities she was gonna have, and by a lot of fighting, and she's full of spit and vinegar, she made it to an exam school. And I'm trying to hold back some tears here, but she's doing really crappy. She's had the worst grades she's ever had in her life. And the school people have been really pleasant. It's not, they're not disrespectful, but they don't have what they need. There is no math special ed person there. And, we've started as parents having some meetings with other parents about the special ed stuff. And I would just ask you, please, I know money's tight. It's tight with everyone. Families and schools and governments, it's tight. But please reevaluate the special ed situation in the high schools in the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sonderberger. And I'm going to ask our Assistant Superintendent of Special Education, Cindy Nielsen, to speak with you in the hallway a little bit more about your issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ann Walsh, and she'll be followed by Barbara Fields and Kathy Carney.
Hi, thanks, Elizabeth. Hi, so my name's Ann Walsh. I'm also a parent of a 9th grade student at BLA. I think Megan shared a lot of the concern. My child also has a math-specific learning disability. She's been at BLA since 7th grade, and we've been very fortunate that her general education math instruction has been pretty good, and she's had teachers who happen to also have children of their own who have IEPs or understand her accommodations and have done okay. So she's been okay, but she has not received any math support. And so when we've been meeting with other families at BLA to sort of go a little more macro about the issue, what we're realizing is that because the students who get to BLA, thanks to the great work of the elementary and inclusion programs throughout the city, right? I want to give a shout out to Marie Mullen at the Higginson. She was the assistant principal at my child's elementary school, and she's really knows how to do inclusion, right? So kids have had success, and then they get to Latin Academy or to another exam school or a high-performing high school, and we want all our high schools to be high-performing, but these kids are doing well academically, and if their high school services are not present, then they leave. And you don't want a school where BLA has only 3.6% of the kids at the school have an IEP, right? So they're already isolated kids. And then you want them to be able to succeed and not leave the school in order to receive the services they need. And that has been recommended to me, not by school personnel, but by central office personnel when we have brought this issue. It has been told to me that the only accommodation that can be provided to your child is that the special education teacher, who does not have a high school math license, will have a conferencing time with her regular education math licensed teacher, and that's how the exam schools handle this. And that will not be okay for her, and it will not be okay for kids who come out of the Higginson or out of the Mattahunt and arrive in exam schools because they've been well prepared, and then the schools are not ready with what they need. So what we need, I mean, it is not my job to solve this problem. Okay, let's be absolutely clear. But I have a suggestion that the parents and the folks at BLA have had conversations like, what do you really need? It would be a start to have an itinerant math specialist who's dual certified in high school math and in special education be shared among high schools where there is a low population of students with this kind of disability, so that 2 days at BLA, 2 days at another school that maybe only has a few students who have that kind of IEP, and let them move around. My kid's supposed to get 45 minutes a week. That's all she's supposed to get, and she hasn't gotten any. And neither has Megan's daughter, and neither have other parents' kids who we've met through conversations at school. So that's our suggestion. If you have a different solution, we're up for whatever. But right now, our kids' IEPs are out of compliance because their school just doesn't have the critical mass of kids that it would take to get enough weighted student funding in order to, pay for a full position. So we'll share. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Walsh.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Barbara Fields, and she'll be followed by Kathy Carney.
Good evening, Ms. Fields.
Good evening. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak this evening. Good evening to Mr. Locanto, Superintendent, and members of the Boston School Committee. I come before you tonight to do something I believe very positive, and that is to support the recommendation of Superintendent Chang around the Mattahunt School. I have a dilemma, though, in that Nancy Dickerson intended to come, and she had an issue with mobility tonight, and she asked me to read her statement. So I wanted to speak on my own, but she felt very strongly about this, so I want to take the time to read her statement, and if you would allow me just a minute of my own time, I would also like to speak if I may. And hopefully maybe I can do it all within the 3 minutes. So I'm reading this on behalf of Nancy Dickerson. And she wrote, "Statement from Nancy Dickerson, a proud Mattapan resident and a retired BPS employee. With over 44 plus years of service to the school district, and 16 of those years as a grateful and privileged principal of a very successful Mattahunt Elementary School, I offer the statement with unabashed honor and pride in asking this committee to allow the Mattahunt School to regain its name, the proud name by which it's been known across the city for over some 39 years, the name carefully chosen to reflect the historic location of the school. The Mattahunt School is a revered institution in my community. There are Mattapan residents, my neighbors, whose children and grandchildren have had positive and confidence-building learning experiences at the Mattahunt School. The Hunt, as it was affectionately known by the young people of our community, was like a second home to many. It is where they learn to work, play, and thrive in a diverse and supportive community. There are teachers and support personnel, many now retired, whose selfless professionalism support the growth of hundreds of youngsters and their families. Together, we raise a community of Somali, Greek, and Spanish bilingual youngsters. Together, we equip the Mattahunt School Library with books and computers. Together, we raise funds to build the Mattahunt School Playground, the very playground currently used by the young people at that building. To erase a name does not erase memories. It does not erase the years of positive, successful, and effective teaching and learning experiences which took place in that building. We as a school district should spend some time in capturing or recapturing the ideas and ideals of the Matterhunt School. The Matterhunt School, before its succession of unfunded programs and revolving door of school leaders, before teaching was replaced by testing. New is different, but what's its significance? When Matterhunt's children come home to visit and reminisce, they will remember the Hunt, the Matterhunt Elementary School. The Matterhunt School name was carefully chosen and supported by my friend and mentor, the first principal of the Matterhunt School. It is irrefutable and unfortunate that some difficulties befell the school. Whatever the ills, they were not the doings of the students, the residents, the past, or future partners and supporters. Changing the name will not change the outcome. Changing a name without changing how we support staff and students, that is with adequate fiscal and human resources, is at best a cosmetic feature. The Matterhunt Elementary School has always had a positive and respected standing in our community. It is with open arms that we embrace and celebrate the first dual language Haitian Creole program. We are also proud that it will carry the honorable name of Toussaint Louverture, can join the long list of positive educational influences upon the families and neighbors of the Mattapan community. I respectfully request that we retain the name Matterhunt Elementary School. Thank you for listening, Nancy E. Dickerson. I would like to echo the support that is expressed in Nancy Dickerson's statement to the school committee for the reasons that she has stated. And I really thank Dr. Chang for coming to this recommendation. It's been a long, long travel for us to get here. It's been a bumpy road, but we are proud that it will hopefully be over and we can move back to making the Matterhunt School the kind of school that it has been over these years and get away from the negativism that has surfaced around the name due to this testing that people are beginning to realize now does not determine the worth of a school. And hopefully at some point we'll eliminate that whole testing process that has really had a very disproportionate impact on communities of color, because it does not take into consideration how you really determine the knowledge base of our children. I'd like to just say one thing again on my own behalf around the budget for the Matterhunt School, and ask that the school, as was stated earlier, and that was in the correspondence from Lincoln, that the school receive the appropriate resources so it can truly be a trauma-informed school as designated in the student assignment handbook. Parents currently select the school based on this descriptive and good faith because their children are in need of the services that such a school would provide. They expect that the school would be equipped to serve their children. The school is doing its best, and I commend the staff for their efforts. However, the school does not have the resources to support the term trauma-informed practices, as denoted. Someone mentioned that the mayor has added $2.4 million. We would ask that you really consider equipping the Matterhunt with the resources it needs so that it can carry out the task before it.
20 seconds.
Okay, and let me, since everybody talked about the other thing, I do want to say, though, that there needs to be a culturally aligned school psychologist 4 days a week at the school, and that we also have clinical support there. And the last thing is on another different topic, and I'll take 2 seconds, and that is I'd like to really ask this district and the superintendent not to take us down the path with Madison Park that we have gone through with the Matterhunt School. We do not need to, as the kids would say, we don't need to go there again. The Matterhunt School is positioned to do, the Madison Park is positioned to do some great things. There have been some accomplishments under the current executive director. We do not need to take his role and responsibilities from him, especially at this time when the school is on a good track. So we do not want to go through that again. So I would ask that we take the time, the effort, we support Kevin McCaskill there, give him his responsibilities back, and let's work together to take the Madison Park where it needs to go. And thank you for the extra time.
Thank you, Ms. Fields.
Our final speaker is Kathy Carney.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Kathy Carney, and I'm the president of Local 230, the Food and Nutrition Services Workers. Thank you for listening to me tonight. I'm Dr. Chain and members of the school committee. I'm here to support fully the new My Way Cafe that the Shaw family and the school department has collaborated together to push forward. However, it takes everyone to make this work. And by everyone, I mean management, the Shaw Foundation, the mayor, the local 230 members that have been working there. And as of this date, we were blindsided by the mayor's announcement with the 25 new schools. Not one person had been notified that their school was under consideration for this. Can you imagine being at work and hearing this on the news? What, my school? Today we got a call from a member. She heard it from her custodian that they're going to be coming in and redoing her kitchen. We must work together to make this work. There needs to be open communication between all parties. This is the first time in over 10 years that the city has been in talks about not having a vended company come in and make food for us. We're very happy to do it, but we have to be included in everything that's being prepared. So that's all I wanted to say is I would like your support in talking with FNS, the Shaw Foundation, and the mayor to include us in the proceedings. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Carney.
Mr. Locanto, that concludes our speakers for public comment.
Well, thank you, Ms. Sullivan. Our first action item this evening is grants for approval totaling $697,766. I'll now open it up to the committee for questions or discussion. It sounds like there are no questions for the district on the grants this evening. I'll entertain a motion now to approve the grants as presented.
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Coleman. Is there a second? Thank you, Dean Robinson. Is there any discussion or objection to the motion? Any objection to approving the grants by unanimous consent? Hearing none, the grants are approved. Thank you. Now our next action item is the renaming of the Mattapan Early Elementary School. You recall that at our last meeting, District Instructional Superintendent Mary Driscoll and Principal Walter Henderson detailed the district school's renaming process as required by the school committee's policy. That process included 2 public hearings and a vote by the school site council. Tonight, the school committee will take action on the superintendent's recommendation to change the name of the Mattapan Early Elementary School to the Mattahunt Elementary School. At this time, I'd like to turn things over to our superintendent for any final comments.
Thank you so much. The school committee did hear last week that the process did elicit several recommendations about the naming of the school. I conferred with the team and decided that we should keep the name the Mattahunt Elementary School with the name of Toussaint Louverture gracing the dual language Haitian Creole program at the school. That is our recommendation. That is my recommendation. I look forward to your support on that. And we have much to celebrate about the great work that's happened in the school. And earlier this evening, we did highlight, just most recently, the $30,000 seed fund that the school received. Just so proud of the work of that community, of the young people there, the staff of the school. It's one of the schools I visited most often. And I hope that the school committee supports this decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chang. We'll open it up now to the committee for questions or discussion.
I think we want to just congratulate the Mattahunt for all the work they did to bring this back forward. I mean, there's been a lot of pride in this community, and through all the difficulty, people really stuck with it and made something positive come out of it. So we're very happy to be able to support this going forward. Thank you for all of your hard work and continued work to do this.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. I also want to note just, you know, I think it's been great to hear back from the community on, you know, the positive input on the community process. I know there were a diversity of opinions out there, but we had a number of public meetings, is my understanding, and certainly the input and support of the school site council, as well as a number of other community stakeholder groups within the Mattapan community and within the Mattapan Early Elementary School community as well. I want to particularly note once again that in addition to the proposal that's on the table from the district to rename the school, the Mattahunt Elementary School once again, there is the companion proposal that we would not take a vote on as a committee, but certainly is indicative of the district's commitment to honoring the Haitian American community that is in the school by naming the dual language program at the school, the Toussaint Louverture dual language education program. So I thank the district for taking care to take that step. I also want to note Mr. Lissette's comments earlier about the fact that you know, there are other buildings as well, both on the property at the Mattapan Early Elementary School, as well as elsewhere in Mattapan, where I think this conversation can continue. There is a community center that's adjacent that does not currently have a name, and I'd encourage those in the community that are interested in further taking up the conversation about naming the buildings for valued members of our community and valued members in our community's history, to continue that conversation. And please let this committee and myself know if we can be of assistance in that regard. So without any further comment from the committee, I will entertain a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation to change the name of the Mattapan Early Elementary School to the Mattahunt Elementary School, effective school year 2018-2019, as presented.
So moved.
Thank you, Dean Robinson. Is there a second? Thank you, Ms. Robinson. Is there any discussion or objection to the motion? Ms. Sullivan, will you please call the roll? Excuse me.
Ms. Oliver Davila?
Yes.
Ms. Jerry Robinson?
Yes.
Ms. Regina Robinson?
Yes.
Dr. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. Lecanto?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Sullivan. We're going to move on now to our next presentation, an update from the Office of Food and Nutrition Services. At this time, I'd like to invite Executive Director of Food and Nutrition Services, Laura Benavides, to please step forward with her presentation. But first, I'd like to turn things over to our superintendent.
Thank you so much. This evening, Executive Director of Food and Nutrition Services, Laura Benavides, is joined by her team, and she will be providing an update on her department. Last week, as shared earlier this evening, the mayor did announce an expansion of the rebranded Hub and Spoke to what is called the My Way Cafe to be expanded into 30 BPS schools. These 30 BPS schools will be retrofitted with kitchens that prepare fresh food on site. I do want to share publicly that this work cannot be done without partnerships, and that means with the Shaw Family Foundations, that means with our schools, parents, young people, but also those who work in our kitchens. So I did hear that comment, and we will make sure that we are better partners in the work. This is a very bold vision, to cook food in kitchens that sometimes were built 100 years ago would not be possible without some pretty amazing technology, and hopefully Laura will get into that. This is exciting news. This is a huge investment. It's a huge investment into healthy, nutritious, and delicious meals for our young people, because we know if they eat well, they will be better students and will be able to focus more in school. So looking forward for Laura to share more information with all of you this evening. And also, Laura will also be sharing all the other work that they're doing in food and nutrition services. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Chang. Good evening, and thank you to School Committee Chair, Mr. Locanto, and the school committee, for the opportunity to provide an update on one of our projects in food and nutrition services, which is the Hub and Spoke. The project was developed over almost a year and a half ago and has gone through many transformations, including a new name, which is the My Way Cafe. We have learned much from our experience together. For me personally, it has taught me how to continue to keep focus on our core values of equity, innovation, and coherence, and weave it into everything we do as a department. Before that, I want to make sure I provide information on our current operations and its impact on the project, the public announcement on April 2nd, and our next steps. In food and nutrition services, our mission is to offer all Boston Public Schools students safe, wholesome, nutritious, enjoyable meals to fuel academic excellence. We achieve this in collaboration with students, parents, the community, and school professionals. Our goals continue to be to achieve fiscal stability, increase technology, decrease waste, and build our culture. And we continue to be forward-thinking and forward-acting in regards to how we are setting the standards for our meals served to our students. Are we being innovative in our meals and our service? By providing the meals in ways that students are receptive to them, are we building efficient and coherent ways to deliver our resources? We are determined to evolve the school meal program and continually elevate our schools. We believe that students deserve meals reflective of our culture, our tastes, and our environment, and we strongly believe, and continues to state, we believe eating well is not a privilege, it's a right, and we continue to develop our processes to be equitable to all. In our current operations, 66% of our kitchens have been defined as satellite locations due to their limited opportunities to prepare meals. Most of it is because of the minimal equipment available of just refrigeration and a heating oven. Due to these limitations, we rely on vended meals to provide service to our students. And the vended meals are meals that we purchase that are pre-made and pre-plated. And therefore, these meals represent over 63.6% of our food budget. And since closing our central kitchen, we have spent over $100 million in contracted meals, these vended meals. Labor is another significant cost at 43.2% of our budget, but because the majority of our sites are satellite locations, in most cases with one person on site, it is not as costly as it is in comparison to other urban districts. But even with these cost constraints, our goal is to continue to be self-sustaining and focus on achieving fiscal stability within our current reimbursement of $3.37 per lunch meal. It is a challenge, especially as we work to provide high-quality, local food with high nutritional value within budget to all of our students. But it's within thinking through the issue of meeting this challenge and consideration of how our program, and trying to consider how our program can be more equitable across the district. How can we create efficient deliveries of our resources? How can we be more innovative? And in thinking through these questions is where the ideas of the Hub and Spoke project emerged. I feel this project encompasses our core values of innovation, equity, and coherence, but also our 4 goals. How can we be fiscally sustainable? Because we need to increase participation. How do we increase technology? Find out how we can improve our facilities to introduce a 21st century program into 20th century buildings. How do we decrease waste? Figuring out ways to get our students to enjoy their meal. And how do we improve our culture? By looking at changing our current model service with students at satellite schools and setting our standards for healthy, safe, and fresh meals. The project started in East Boston. The Hub and Spoke project started in East Boston, and we focused on this area as it is an area that has some of the oldest facilities, and we knew there would be challenges in making changes in these facilities. Therefore, there'd be opportunities to learn from whatever we would implement into these facilities that could carry on throughout the district. Once the area was finalized, we needed to choose which schools would be and formalize a plan that included planning and preparing lunches at a hub, which is where which would be the cafeteria, and transport it to be served in spokes, which would be the satellite kitchens. And those were limited in some cases, space. The map above indicates the schools chosen to pilot the Hub and Spoke in East Boston. The yellow star indicates the hub, which is East Boston High School, where the food is being prepared, and the green stars are the spokes, which are East Boston Early Education Center, the Bradley Elementary, and the PJ Kennedy, and they would be receiving and serving the fresh meals. And the other schools in the map are the schools in East Boston. Our goals for the pilot were to serve fresher food, achieve menu equity, which was what is being served at the cooking kitchen would now be served at the satellite kitchen, reduce waste, and improve the dining experience for students. And with the complete support of the Shaw Family Foundation, we launched in spring of 2017, 1 day a week in May and in early June. Once we decided to continue for the 17-18 school year, we knew we wanted and needed to upgrade the facilities. And with the support of the foundation, we were able to lay out plans, purchase equipment, and prepare these kitchens to be compliant to prepare and serve meals. For some of these schools, the kitchens were located in the basement, and in order for areas to be able to either cook or receive meals and for them to be labeled as finishing kitchens, work was needed to add in hot and new cold serving lines, combination ovens, equipment needed to prepare and finish off meals. It included 3-compartment sinks to wash and sanitize properly, and hoods to vent our kitchens properly. And all of these things, in most cases, didn't exist in these kitchens before. The work was completed over the summer for the PJK, the Bradley, and the East Boston, EEC. And we also wanted to make sure in this transformation we prepared our team for success. We held a week-long boot camp 1 week prior to the school start, and Boston celebrity chef Ken Oranger came to provide tips and advice in preparing meals to add flavor without sodium. We added in training regarding preparing and serving reimbursable meals, ordering, completing, and in new sets of production records, and all items to remain compliant. We began a slow ramp up in September that started with 1 day a week and gradually grew to 5 days a week by the end of October. We needed to make sure we were strengthening our team, our processes, and our operating procedures. We needed to make sure we could test routing and transportation logistics to include menu items that were transported well and some that did not. All of these processes were reviewed and compared against our cost and our restricted budget. And anything that fell outside of that budget was covered and supported by the Shaw Foundation to ensure that we could focus on the student experience and the participation. And the results? We were flexible menus and some happy faces. If you haven't had a chance to see the the program in action, I invite you to come see it and experience for yourself. It is an amazing feeling to walk into some of these schools where the kitchen's in the basement and you can smell the food being prepared from the first floor to the 4th floor. And this is something I love to see, empty plates, and my favorite is seeing kids bringing lunch from home but then choosing to participate in our school meal program. Based on all of the logistics and reports, participation across the 4 schools increased on a range from 7 to 15%. The PJK showed the most gains in participation. Before the program was implemented, their participation was about 63%, and now they're at about 78 to 79%. The Hub and Spoke speaks to the heart of the school nutrition program, which is about consumption. Are the kids eating what they are choosing? And based on the anecdotal studies, we are seeing less waste and trash, and our production of menus are tighter around what is being prepared and then served to students. Students love the opportunity to make choices and choose the things that they like, and it meets our USDA, and even so, it still meets our USDA meal requirements. So even with these rules, they can still make it their own, my way. Training is also a key as to ensure our staff can transform from this satellite service model to the new finishing kitchen model. And also by drilling down on the numbers regarding participation, production records, consumption, we were able to focus and create cost efficiencies on volume of meals being produced, the consistency of the menu, and creating opportunities to drive down costs without impacting the menu quality or the freshness. The chart before you shows the cost comparison of the current satellite cost per lunch meal with the new hub and spoke model. I highlight our 2 big categories, which is food and labor, and their differences. In comparing the 2 service models, the cost of food is higher at satellite schools with a lower labor cost. And due to the cost efficiency and production of menus, the cost of food is lower at the hub and spoke model, but the labor increases due to additional needs of hands to serve the items. The other categories include our fixed costs, which are utilities and equipment repairs, paper costs, transportation, central office administration. but both are compared to the current USDA reimbursement, and the new model shows a small profit in comparison to our current satellite service model. We also make sure we make room to include that these costs do fluctuate, but they would go on both ways. But with the model that we're seeing now, we are seeing that profit and to be able to carry over across the district. Through these comparisons and the review of the Hub and Spoke project, a public announcement was made on April 2nd, where Mayor Walsh joined Superintendent Chang at the Bradley Elementary to share that we would be expanding the Hub and Spoke model to 25 new schools this summer. The model, which is now branded and renamed to My Way Cafe, and in Spanish, Mi Manera, represents a major Build BPS investment in partnership with the Shaw Family Foundation, Boston Public Schools, our department, Food and Nutrition Services, and the city's Public Facilities Department. The additional 25 schools are located in the East Boston, Roxbury, and Mattapan neighborhoods. As part of the rationale for these three neighborhoods, there were a few things that we took into consideration. In particular, Build BPS has labeled these areas as high priority neighborhoods due to demographic and facilities considerations. And we always want to make sure we're prioritizing our most needy students in an equitable way. So in these neighborhoods, the average percentage, in this slide we see the average percentage of economically disadvantaged students is at 80%. And in comparison to the district-wide percentage, which is at 72%, it's 8 points higher. The term economically disadvantaged is for students who is a member of a household that meets the income eligibility guidelines for free and reduced price meals, which is less than or equal to 185% of federal poverty guidelines. In addition, the opportunity index for these neighborhoods is at 0.033 points higher than the district average. The opportunity index measures and quantifies schools that serve the highest concentrations of students in need. And the last data point I utilize is the students in these schools have a higher daily participation in lunch than the district-wide average. We know that there is a need for these children and the meals we serve, and we want to make sure that they have the opportunity to be provided the best meals possible. So at the announcement, as the mayor stated, this program, because we'll be doing it over the summer, is now going on steroids to have 25 schools ready for next year. So in spring this year, we'll have designs for the 25 schools will be released in this month, and the bids to be awarded for May 2018. Construction in cafeterias will begin on June 29th to be finished in August, and we'll be working around summer programs or any issues at these particular schools. There will be a principal open house to be hosted by the Shaw Foundation on April 24th for the principals at these schools. And we, as in Food and Nutrition Service, will be preparing for the launch in fall of 2018. Which will include hiring key personnel such as a My Way Cafe director, some training and team and opportunities for our staff, drivers, and any additional staff that would be needed at new sites. We'll be looking to be developing key training processes for current and new staff. We are having our internal meetings with our teams in April and May and preparing for summer. We'll be focused for the start of and fall of 2018, and the goal will be to complete the processes in schools in East Boston first, which would be staging the schools to roll out again 1 day per week and gradually building to 5 days a week. And then the next neighborhood would be the Roxbury, and then final to be by spring be the Mattapan. With that, I thank you for your time and your support.
Thank you, Ms. Benavides. I'll open it up now to my fellow committee members for questions and discussion. Dean Robinson?
Thank you for the presentation. And I couldn't help but notice how smart it was that you had a photo of empty plates.
I wanted to make sure my talking points met that, yes.
that it matched. I'm happy to see just the variety of food. I think it's really critical having the colorful blend on the menu. So well done. I wanted to just hear a little more of the internal engagement process with the schools, just because as we heard in public comment, how are they communicated? How are the families engaged with the process? Can you talk a little more about the deeper engagement process?
Sure. So the expectation is, now that we have the list of schools and the information is public, is to now focus on communicating the information and working with our schools, especially our staff members, to ensure that they understand what our next steps are going to be. Meaning from what does it mean, what kind of training, the timelines, and that information. We also we're working towards ensuring that we have parent engagement, because it is a great opportunity to share with parents of how we are changing the way we're providing with meals. As we develop the plan, I'm happy to share with the school committee. As of right now, we have a lot of dates in the air, but we are definitely focused in making sure that we are including our staff and our parents in these processes.
Okay, so that's a little bit of the what and a little bit of the who. Can you just drill down a little more as to who is going to guide the staffs with next steps, who's going to provide the training, and who's going to engage the parents?
Sure. So for the guidance for the training, that would come from my office. So that would be making sure that we know what the processes are going to be, what the standard operating procedures would be in this new process, what would be done at a hub school or in comparison to what would be done at a spoke school. Then also, so that would be coming from my office because it's about operations. And working with parent and engagement, we would make sure that we would work with the principals at the school sites to determine when we'd have meetings at the locations. The Shaw Foundation has also offered to help us with being able to organize those meetings, and then also organize meetings and provide additional training for our staff as well.
Okay, and so do the schools, the parents, the staff, do they know if they're a hub or a spoke? Do they kind of know even the general idea of what this process entails for their school?
Probably not, because as we made the announcement, it was the announcement about something new and something different is coming. These meetings would be able to help us drill down what exactly does that mean for the school site.
Okay.
At this moment, it's just I am a school that's going to be participating in this program, and it looks like I will be doing this.
Okay.
I will be receiving a fresher meal.
Okay, so, and I was going to ask if the messaging, again, I'm all about how do we help craft the best messaging for families so that they feel engaged, empowered, that this is working for them. So you said it's going to be new, it's going to be different, and you'll be able to articulate how it will be better than what is currently taking place at their school?
The expectation is exactly that. The message would be that we offer the opportunity for children to choose what they eat and eat what they choose. That would be the message.
Last question, will there be an opportunity for families to have taste testing and just kind of to taste and see the new opportunity?
That's always something we can put in the plans. Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yes.
Just a part of the process. I think that could be a creative angle to take to get their buy-in. Restaurants do it all the time, and I'm a happy recipient of it. So just wondering if there could be some of that creative lens to the process and engaging the parents.
Sure.
Thank you, Dean Robinson. Ms. Oliver Davila.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. I do think it is a project gone on steroids. I agree with you. I am sending you really good vibes all summer long. Everything's going to go smoothly, and if you need a place to come and vent, my office is down the street from some of these schools, so come on over.
Thank you.
I just had two questions. I don't know if I'm just a little tired. I apologize. But when I look at like page 8, and it says the participation increased from 7 to 15%. Is that the participation? Can you just explain that to me again? Because I don't know if I understood.
Sure. You know what? Even when I was putting the data points together, I struggled to how we'd explain that. It would be it's in a range from 7 to 15% at location. So, for example, at the P.J. Kennedy Elementary, lunch was at 63%, and then they increased participation to 78 to 79%. At another school site, it would be I was at, for example, at 70%, then I increased to 77%.
Okay.
So it's to include all 4 of the locations, the hub and the 3 spokes in this, and it was in a range because each one had different number of students, different and different things that we would take into consideration. But the participation was this is what it was beforehand, and so it was just a range.
Thank you for explaining that. I thought I was really tired, and I thought 7 to 15. That's so low. Are we really thinking? So thank you. I am tired. My other question is around the schools that were chosen, the 25 schools. So when I look at the Roxbury list, for example, I do see some school, like I don't see, for example, the Timothy School. And I know we're not supposed to single out schools. I'm just giving an example of a school that I know has a lot of needs. And then I look at some other schools on this list that I feel like they have less needs than that school. So I'm just wondering if you can talk about how those schools were chosen. And maybe it's a process because maybe there's a kitchen, not a kitchen, or other things, and this will roll out to other schools. And so therefore, it's a moot point, my question.
Well, if I've had it my way, it would be even super steroids. I would try to get every school over the summer. But I think part of the things in conversations with the Public Facilities Department and with Build BPS is looking at other projects that were in place for some of these schools. So, for example, if a particular school that was in one of the neighborhoods, if they was slated to do work on it in 6 months, we would be better that the kitchen could be part of that project, and then we could utilize that funding at another location.
Mm-hmm.
Those were some of the thought processes behind some of the schools that were chosen, and part of it also would be thinking about what could be done within the locations during the time frame. Because for some of these schools, they're pretty small, so it may be even more disruptive than we would anticipate over the 8 to 10 weeks that we wanted to do it over the summer.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I just want to make sure that, you know, we keep talking about equity and who's getting what. I mean, I think it's the same piece. I'm just directing that to Dr. Chang, not to you, but just in terms of, you know, making sure that we are, when we talk about like the facilities master plan, like who's getting what and how we really determine that. So I just want to make sure that we keep putting an eye towards that. And is there a hope that this will be at every school?
Always
someday?
a hope, yes. That would be my goal.
Yeah.
Because it's, I see, that would be the goal, is because we have a lot of need. We do have, it's 81 facilities that in the district that are that are satellite schools.
And thank you so much for to the foundation. This is really great. I mean, I saw this documentary a long time ago. I really wish I could remember. I talk about it. I don't remember what it is. But they did all this research around students that were having a lot of issues with trauma and behavior, and, you know, using fresh food that had a lot of nutrients, and they really saw like a lot of behavioral changes. I think it goes a long way. So thank you.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Oliver Davila. Ms. Robinson.
Yes. Thank you very much for the presentation and the work that you've been doing. My question would be the lessons learned from the students who are currently participating. How will that be shared with students in new schools in terms of getting them excited about this new prospect?
That's a great question. And part of the panel that will be hosted by the foundation is bringing in a principal at one of these schools that would speak the voice for some of the students. So I think the opportunity is we're currently doing a lot of survey work with the students, and we can be able to share that to know how it impacted them. What are they looking forward to in the meals that we're serving, and also providing a voice in some of the choices that we're providing. So some of the lessons learned that we do want to take away is that to making sure that we're listening to what the students are saying, putting some of the menu items and how we're trying out new items with them. Also be receptive to when they're not aware of certain items that we want to try that are new, or also even taking into consideration when you're learning something new, it's a very big transformation. It takes time, and it's a very big learning process. But I think part of it, and some of the responses that we have gotten back have just been really positive. But I think it would be an opportunity to come back and talk to students as well.
Yeah, in terms of students, I'm thinking about some of our youngest students. We have 3- and 4-year-olds, many of whom are picky eaters. How do you handle, or how do the schools help families both to understand what their children are or not eating during the day, and how are we trying to help them become healthier eaters early on to really take advantage of this?
That's a great question. It's one of the reasons that we focus on the East Boston Early Education Center, because it had such small children. And one of the things that we did learn early on is providing them a lot of choices was a big paralysis for them, because they didn't know what to do. The beauty behind the program and the way the menu has been built is that we take apart a menu item. So for example, in our recipes, in our cooking schools, we put together spaghetti and meat sauce with meatballs. It's an example. In this process, the expectation is that we now separate the pasta, we separate the sauce, and we separate the meat or meat alternate. So with that, the child comes in and says, I want pasta and I want sauce, or I want pasta and I want meatballs. So you can see when you come in and visit, it's a variety of different plates that are at the table. So they're literally making their own choices and making it their way.
That's good. I had it with all 3 sauces.
That's right.
Thank you.
Together.
I can say that you're much more accommodating than I am in my house. It's
One way or the other.
What mommy and daddy make, or go eat a banana. I will say, however, I think there are 12 children, age 12 or under, on this side of the table, and including your daughter.
Very quickly.
Well, I was thinking about it, but I had to double check my math. So we do, in fact, have a small committee focus group that we can convene at any moment, of course.
Sure.
At any moment.
Yep.
That'd be great.
Taste testing.
That'd be great. And we appreciate that. I think that's part of the beauty of experiencing it, is that you're in there, you're smelling it, you're hearing it being prepared. It's wonderful. And then on top of that, you get to make a choice. You can say, I'd prefer this, I can prefer this. And then all within that, it could still be a USDA, meeting a USDA requirement for a reimbursable meal.
That's great.
I will also note here, your construction calendar does look ambitious. So we wish you the best in that regard. But I know this has been the product, again, of a long and thoughtful process. And, certainly to Ms. Oliver Davalo's point, a number of the schools that were chosen for this next phase were done so with construction concerns in mind. And certainly the schools that are available for expansion are being taken advantage of with an eye towards those neighborhoods that are most in need. So we'll hope for no further snow days, of course, so that we don't need to back you off of that June 29th date any further. I think we have unanimous consent in that regard. But nevertheless, I really think just taking a look at the pilot to date, just the incredible results here. And I think that slide that shows just the sea change in where we spend our money, achieving such efficiencies around the cost of food here that allows not only an increase in satisfaction, as evidenced by the fact that we have participation rates going up. We anecdotally see less trash, less waste thrown away at the end of lunch, but be able to do it in an efficient way. And when you think about that efficiency, not only are you saving money, and I mean it adds up. That 9 cents that we're talking about, or is it 6 cents?
6 cents.
6 cents. Excuse me. Over whatever the multiplier is for the number of school lunches that we're doing on an annual basis within this program, and we will be doing in this program as it expands. That's a big savings to the district that can be reinvested. And taking a look as well at the way in which this program has been schemed out, we're adding in the capacity for additional good jobs. These are union jobs, these are city jobs. They're for our residents. They provide benefits. That's an important thing for us and an important thing for this district and this city. Jobs that mean something for people that can make a career out of it. So we appreciate the fact that in addition to the healthy aspects here, we're creating a meaningful base for our fellow neighbors and residents in the city. All I can say is, good luck. Keep it up. I will note there was one other question earlier about, what the pace is here and what the expectation is to expand this program out throughout the district. I think it's helpful for us to note that, we are in year 1 of a 3-year contract for vended food with Revolution Foods. I think we'll probably have you back at some point to talk a little bit about how that's going, since it is a new vendor and we are in year 1. But certainly that needs to be taken into account as we have a multi-year process where we expand this hub and spoke approach and think about, how we transition out or how we account for the contract that we have. And I think we also need to take into account as well those freestanding cafeterias. I know one of my children's schools has a freestanding cafeteria, and they operate in this environment as well. And whether those cafeterias become hubs in their own respective neighborhoods, or what other opportunities there might be, those schools need to work in this ecosystem as well and taken advantage of some of these food purchasing efficiencies and preparation practices that have been innovated through the helpful intervention here of the Shaw Foundation and their partners. So I want to close just saying thank you once again. We have the benefactor of the Shaw Foundation here tonight, Ms. Jill Shaw, and the Executive Director, Ross Wilson, who's no stranger to the district. Thank you again for all your hard work and your efforts in supporting not only this program, but this district in general. So we'll look forward to hearing more from you on this. And again, we continue to wish you the best and wish all the best for this program on behalf of our students.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you again, Ms. Benavides. We're going to move on now to our next presentation. That's the interim salary and non-personnel payments on external funds presentation. This time, I'd like to invite Anu Jainath to please step forward with her presentation. But first, I'd like to turn it over to Superintendent Dr. Tommy Chang for his remarks.
Anu Jain, who is our Director of Federal and State Grants, will come up for any questions you may have. We will be seeking your approval on interim salary and non-personnel payments using external funds. The memo you have in front of you mirrors the interim salary payment order that has been presented to the school committee for their approval in past years. It also provides details behind the request by outlining the grants that are projected to be received in fiscal year 19. In addition, a request for the non-personnel lines to be approved as well in order to reflect what is provided to the city auditors every year. Anu is here to answer any questions that you may have.
Good evening. I just
Thank
want to clarify that it's not a presentation, so it's an interim salary payment order for personnel and non-personnel encumbrances. We receive our grant awards pretty late. We get it usually around July or August. So these are based on the projections that we have, and we are seeking an approval to start encumbering funds and paying out salaries on these grants.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Jainath. Are there any questions or discussion from the committee? Sure, please, Dean Robinson.
Could you explain a little bit of the redesign that many of the schools are receiving grants for? Madison Park, Grew, Dorchester, Brighton, Excel.
Yes, those are the turnaround grants. So when a school is identified as a turnaround school, they are eligible for a competitive school turnaround grant. So it's called the school redesign grants.
Okay, okay.
Is that all? Thank you, Dean Robinson. And thank you, Ms. Jainath. As Dr. Chang noted, this is a practice that was begun a number of years ago. As part of our fiduciary duty as the board, we like to keep tabs, obviously, on the commitments that we're making, as well as the funds that are going to be available to pay for those. And so I note that the memoranda that are distributed each year include a note that payments will only be made if the business manager for the district assesses that there is no risk in making those payments based upon our expected intake of the grant funds that are listed here.
Correct.
Yes, and thank you again for giving us that helpful timeline as well. I understand that most federal and state grants do come due in July. Is that right?
Yeah, so most of the federal grants come in July, and then we will be coming back to school committee for every individual grant as they get awarded.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Okay.
And thank you for
Thank
staying
you.
for this late hour. Have a good evening. Well, thank you once again. We're going to move on to our last item for business tonight. This is a presentation on the tentative collective bargaining agreement between the Boston School Committee and the custodians unit of local district 35. I'm going on memory here, so I apologize. It's the Painters Union Local.
You got it. 35.
District Council 35. Thank you, sir. I'd like to invite Mr. Jeremiah Hassan, the Interim Director of Labor Relations, along with PJ Praskinis from our Facilities Department to provide a presentation. Dr. Chang, if you have any introductory words.
Just a few quick things. Thank you for all those who are still here this evening. Thank you to the two people. Quite the crowd.
And anyone off salary?
Don't get too punchy.
Thank you, Jeremiah, and thank you, PJ Perskinis, for being here this evening. As Mr. Lecanto stated, this is our tentative collective bargaining agreement with Local 1952, which is our Painters and Allied Trades District Council 35. And this TA was reached last month and ratified by the union already on let me correct that, but on April 8th. And it does come with annual 2% raises retroactive to September of 2016. Mr. Hassan will get into more details. We will ask for your review and your recommendation to approve this contract in our next meeting, which is April 25th. Thank you so much.
Mr. Hassan.
Yeah, so good evening, Chairperson Lecanto, Superintendent, and committee members. Thank you for having us here. I'm Jeremiah Hassan. I'm the interim Director of Labor Relations, and this is PJ Perskinis. This evening, we're just going to give you a brief presentation on the tentative agreement reached with Local Union Number 1952, Painters and Allied Trades District Council Number 35, the Custodians Union. So here's a brief timeline of the tentative agreement we reached. We reached the deal on March 20th. As Superintendent Chang mentioned, the union did vote on it and ratified it on April 8th, Sunday night. And here tonight, again, we'll point out some of the highlights for you, and we request that you vote to ratify the agreement and approve a supplemental appropriation request in the amount of $1,013,216 for the cost items for the financial year of 2018 at your next meeting on April 25th. So the basics, as Dr. Chang pointed out, it's a 4-year deal broken up into 2 agreements covering a 1-year period retroactively for 16-17 and a 3-year extension from September 1st, 2017 through August 31st, 2020, with the custodians receiving a base wage increase of 2% per year. Taking a look at some of the highlights of the deal, well, it's important to mention that we currently have a strong working relationship with the custodians union, and we believe that this contract builds on that foundation. Looking at the employee benefits, the custodians will receive increased wages, additional opportunities for training and building their skills beyond what is maybe traditionally considered custodial responsibilities. They'll also be receiving a legal fund and a housing fund to assist with home ownership or renting in the city of Boston, and paid parental leave. In exchange for those benefits, we received some operational reforms in the form of increased flexibility to ensure that we have, when it comes to staffing our most complex buildings. We also put restrictions on vacation time during our crucial summer months, which ensures that we have the proper manpower to prepare our schools for the upcoming year. And we also increased the flexibility in regards to evaluations for custodians. Overall, we think this is a fair, equitable deal, and it is affordable. And most importantly, it benefits the students, the district, and the employees of the custodian union. So we ask that you approve the deal at your next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hassan. I'll open it up to the committee for further questions or comment. Okay. Well, I do just want to say thank you once again for taking this agreement into completion, and to District Council 35 for ratifying this agreement. Just to recap, typically we have a executive session amongst the fellow members to talk about our tentative agreements with our collective bargaining partners prior to signature, but given the speed with which this agreement was settled alongside the budget process, we find ourselves here with a tentatively ratified agreement and, tentatively agreed to agreement that's been ratified by the union. So just to give a couple highlights, and I appreciate that summary that you provided. 2% base wage increases over 4 years. That's absolutely in line with what we've agreed to with other city unions and other unions within the district. The Housing Trust is actually something that goes back about 12 or 13 years now to the AFSCME bargaining unit at the city. I was actually working in the city's Office of Labor Relations at the time when we first initiated that program. And I know there's a number of people that are actually not only still living in the city, but have students in the schools that have taken advantage of the Housing Trust through AFSCME and have received, I believe, full reimbursement for their investments in the Housing Trust over the 10-year period that's intervened. So that's a great program, and I'm glad to see it expanded to another bargaining unit in the city that has some of the lower paid workers in our community. And parental leave as well. That's been something that's making its way across all of our bargaining units and our employee sectors across the district. So thank you so much for doing that, and thank you, of course, for ensuring that we get a little bit of management flexibility and reforms, specifically the scheduling and training highlights that you've included this evening are very important to maintaining a well-trained and nimble workforce. So we'll look forward to taking a vote next week, at the next meeting, which is in 2 weeks. And I don't think we have any other further questions at this time, so we appreciate you staying this late.
Great. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Well, we'll move on to public comment on reports. Ms. Sullivan?
Thank you, Mr. Lecanto. We have one speaker, Peggy Wiesenberg.
Ms. Wiesenberg?
I just, based on the last report, just wanted to say how important our custodians are in our schools. They're the people who keep the buildings clean and safe for our students and show respect for the students and teachers. But on a personal note, I thought you'd be interested to know that when I was a parent at the Hale School and was on the school parent council, my co-chair, one of the 3 co-chairs, was the wife of the custodian. They lived on Fort Hill, and it was fantastic to have them as active members of the school parent council. And they'd open the building for us. And many school parent councils, meet before and after school time. And there was one dark period of financial difficulties in the Boston City and School Department when small schools like the Hale were told, you can't have parent meetings at your school. You have to hold your parent meetings at a bigger school that has a custodian because we can't afford to have a custodian paid overtime so that you can have your school parent meetings at your school. And I think schools are real communities, and it's important to have the custodians on our team so that the buildings can attract and retain parents and have them actively participate in school parent council. So thank you. I think this is a good agreement.
Thank you, Ms. Wiesenberg.
Thank you.
New business. Pardon me, Ms. Sullivan. Dean Robinson.
No new business, but I did want to just communicate our appreciation to custodians as well. I should have mentioned it in the earlier presentation, so forgive me. Because I know many of them personally. I know what they teach the kids with their best practices. So if you could just carry a message back to your team from, if I could speak to from the school committee, that we see them and that we see their work. I know many of their families. I know when they are leaving while those are coming in, and when they're there while many are gone. I know the work that they do, and sometimes the toll that it can take, on their family. But I appreciate most importantly is their dedication and their work ethic, because it is seen, and kids see it in the school. Every school I visit, I see staff members, I see kids, but I'm always looking for where the custodians are, where they're located and what they're doing during the day. Kids love, they're a part of the team. So please send a message to them that I know this is business here, but they're people. And they're people that we really, I personally value. I love what they've been teaching my boys, especially because they come home and talk about those members of their schools. And parents appreciate them as well. So let them know they're role models and they're not invisible at all. Let them watch this tonight.
Thank you, Dean Robinson. Any other new business? Well, that concludes our business for this evening. Our next school committee meeting will take place on Wednesday, April 25th at 6 p.m. If there's nothing further, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Dean Robinson. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Coleman. Looks like unanimous consent. We are adjourned. Good night.